Chapter 3274. As he meditated and cultivated, numerous unbelievable scenes appeared on Lin Sun's body. The most striking amongst them were the 4 great Tao manifestations related to the 4 ruins of Tao, and they respectively transformed into the ruins of End, Kunlun ruins, ruins of creation, and ruins of Tao. Amongst them, the ruins of Tao was the most blurry, and it was far from being as clear and solid as the other 3 ruins of Tao. However, Lin Sun could sense that as he comprehended and grasped some of the profundities of the spirit bestowal source, the aura that belonged to the ruins of Tao had condensed greatly. The 5 sequences of the ruins of End, the laws of creation of the ruins of creation, and the laws of destiny of Kunlun ruins. Then would the quintessence of the ruins of Tao be related to the laws of life? Lin Sun meditated as he deduced, and he was completely unaware of the passage of time. Half a month later, Lin Sun woke up from his meditation. His entire aura revealed a simple and natural feeling, and there wasn't a trace of sharpness in it at all. It was ethereal like the clouds in the horizon, yet inconspicuous like the dust in the world. The body fused with the Tao, and the Tao was natural. Just as the embodiment scripture said, there was nothing he couldn't accomplish. In other words, Lin Sun could transform into the heavens, the earth, the sun, and the moon, or he could transform into an ant. Everything in the world and the Tao of the past and present could be transformed into his body. This was an indescribably wonderful charm of the great Tao. When an ordinary person saw Lin Sun, they would feel that he was ordinary like one of the myriad of living beings without any characteristic. However, if it was a supreme figure that was on par with Lin Sun on the path of the Tao, they would definitely be able to sense this charm that was suffused with Lin Sun's body. The body and mind transform into the Tao, and the Tao transform into nature. This can be said to be great freedom. At this moment, Lin Sun finally understood why the boundless realm was called Great Freedom. After carefully comprehending his own cultivation for a while, he stood up and walked out of the room. In the courtyard, Su Wanjun, who was dressed in a red dress, was brewing tea while Xia Ji sat on a rattan chair at the side and sipped tea. The atmosphere was tranquil, and the scene was tranquil and beautiful. Lin Sun's appearance didn't break this tranquil atmosphere at all, and he naturally merged into this world. When he arrived by Su Wanjun's side, the latter's hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly, and only then did she realize that Lin Sun had arrived without her noticing. She was stunned for a moment and looked up at Lin Sun, saying, "My little friend, your cultivation is getting more and more mysterious." Lin Sun smiled. "Half a month of quiet cultivation, I just felt a little bit, not much progress." "Lin Sun, when are we leaving this world?" Xia Ji asked. "You can leave now," Lin Sun said casually. He and Xia Ji had already comprehended the golden millet pillow of the heavenly Tao of this world, which meant that they had the means to leave this world. "But before we leave, we have to do something," said Lin Sun. "What is it?" This time, it was Su Wanjun's turn to be surprised. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Go and clean up those messengers of destiny scattered in this world, so that they won't disturb your cultivation after Xia Ji and I leave." Su Wanjun felt warmth in her heart. It had been a long time since she felt such concern from a friend. On the same day, Lin and Xia Ji took action. In less than 7 days, the remaining 10 or so destiny messengers of the Zhen department were completely wiped out by Lin Sun. As soon as the news came out, the entire origin world was shaken. Lin Sun and Xia Ji had already left the origin world through the gate of heaven. Before they parted, Su Wanjun gave Lin Sun a jar of sincerity, brewed by the swordsman. Lin Sun originally wanted to leave the spiritual affinity and the 3-inch wooden sword to Su Wanjun. But when he thought that doing so might affect Su Wanjun's Taoist heart, he gave up in the end. In the end, Su Wanjun's obsession was too strong. She was probably aware of this problem, which was why she chose to stay in the origin world and wait for the swordsman who had reincarnated. The fifth heaven of the spirit's realm was called the evil source. This world was extremely mysterious. If human cultivators entered it, they would encounter all kinds of evil that targeted the human race. If living beings from other clans entered, they would encounter all sorts of evil things that targeted these living beings. If they wanted to leave, there was only one way, and that was to destroy the evil source. Before entering this world, Lin Sun and Xia Ji had discussed that whoever left the evil source first would meet the other in the sixth heaven, the Thousand Tribulations world. The reason for this was that Lin Sun was a human, and Xia Ji's origins were related to the talent she possessed in the spirit endowment world. She was an extremely unique life form. When the two of them entered the evil source, they would be completely separated. At the same time, the evil that they encountered in the evil source would be different as well. The evil source. Ripples appeared in space, and then Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. The heavens and the earth were dark and gloomy while demonic energy surged through the mountains and rivers. Snow-white skeletons could be seen all over the ground, and even the air was suffused with a pungent stench. Lin Sun frowned slightly and said, "This world really is as bloody as the rumors say." Before he came here, he'd learned that when human cultivators entered the evil source, they would see a world where the human race was the target of plundering and enslavement. In this world, demons were revered while ghosts were the masters. The mountains and rivers were filled with terrifying beings that reigned supreme over the Grand Tao. The history and civilization of this world were written by demons, ghosts, and all the laws and rules of the world were created by them. On the other hand, the human race that resided throughout this world had become their prey and livestock. Some demons viewed humans as slaves, and they could order and enslave them at will. Some viewed humans as fish, and they ate their flesh raw, drank their blood when thirsty, and chewed their bones and sucked their marrow. Some viewed humans as medicinal herbs that were used to temper and improve their cultivation. The stronger a cultivator was, the more these demons would like them, and they viewed them as mortal cores. In short, humans were the most lowly beings in the evil source. In the eyes of the demons and ghosts of this world, they were livestock, slaves, medicinal herbs, and so on and so forth. Lin Sun was naturally aware that this was the torture that the evil source world placed on the human race. Just like how cultivators from other races would similarly suffer the torture of their race when they entered the evil source world. However, even though he was aware of it, when he appeared in this world and smelled the foul stench of blood in the heavens and the earth, detest still surged into Lin Sun's heart. This was a vast expanse of mountains and rivers. However, the air was actually filled with such a bloody aura. From this, one could imagine just how much slaughter there was in this world. On the other hand, the race that suffered the most deaths in this world was definitely the human race. The important matter at hand is to find the leader of all evil as soon as possible. Lin Sun pondered. If he wanted to leave this world, then he had to annihilate the leader of all evil. Only in that way would he be able to draw down the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. Swoosh. In the next moment, Lin Sun flashed forward. After every single cultivator entered the evil source world, everything they encountered was different. Even if they were all humans, the dangers they encountered in the evil source world were different. Because of this, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about being attacked by other cultivators in the evil source world. He hadn't moved forward for long when Lin Sun suddenly stopped in midair. In his divine sense, he noticed a group of mountains in the distance. Baleful chi shot into the sky, and it dyed the clouds in the horizon pitch black. The dense stench of blood seemed like a volcanic eruption, and it ceaselessly spread out from the group of mountains and actually transformed into a bloody airflow. Lin Sun thought for a moment before he moved closer. He saw the group of mountains was covered in skeletons like a mountain range, and the skeletons were like a forest. Human heads were burnt into felt pieces, and human skin and flesh were rotten into mud and dust. Human tendons were wrapped around trees, and they were dry and shiny like silver. It really was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and it really smelled horrible. Groups of small demons cut the flesh of the living into pieces, and numerous ghosts cooked the flesh of the humans. In the depths of the group of mountains were numerous cages, and thousands of humans of all ages were imprisoned there. All of them had numb expressions and empty eyes, and they just seemed like livestock in a pen. On the peak of one of these mountains was a luxurious and grand palace. There were graceful and beautiful female cultivators that had transformed into servants, and they served cooked food and fine wine to Qin-shi. The food was human blood, human flesh, and so on and so forth. Within the palace, a group of demon leaders were having a meal together, and they were chatting cheerfully and wittily. When he saw the scenes of demons killing and eating humans, Lin soon couldn't restrain the rage in his heart. All living beings were equal? It was complete nonsense to Lin Sun. Firstly, he was a member of the human race. When he saw these scenes of humans being treated like livestock and being slaughtered at will, how could Lin Sun remain indifferent? The evil origin world. As expected of the source of all evil. Lin Sun muttered in his heart. From his point of view, everything in this world was an expanse of evil. There was no need to talk about why humans were allowed to eat livestock, and why animals weren't allowed to eat humans. If one looked back into the history of the human race, it wasn't difficult to notice that no matter which era or which world it was, the human race had always been the weakest race during the primeval times. It was precisely the countless ancestors of the human race who'd shed their blood and worked hard to lead the human race step by step to keep pace with the other races in the universe, and they'd forged a glorious chapter that belonged to the human race. On the other hand, the human race had been reduced to livestock and medicine in the evil origin world. Under such circumstances, the human race would be no different from a whore in the mortal world if they were to consider hypocritical things like justice and equality. Suddenly, Lin Sun's pupils narrowed. He saw a little demon in the depths of the group of mountains grab a wailing little boy, and then it pressed the little boy down on the chopping board before it slashed down repeatedly with the bone blade in its hand. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, the little boy that was like a statue had been chopped into pieces by the little demon, and when his blood flowed out, the little demon even stretched out its scarlet-red head and swallowed it. The little demon revealed a comfortable and intoxicated expression as it praised. I didn't raise this little fellow for 5 years in vain. The flesh of this little fellow is still the most delicious. As it spoke, it swiftly sifted through the human flesh on the chopping board while muttering, "The internal organs can be boiled into soup, a pair of arms can be roasted, and this little head can be made into a top-notch dish." In a cage nearby, a young human couple lay paralyzed on the ground, and they were sobbing. The person that had been chopped into pieces was their child. The expressions of the others in the cage were still numb, and they'd long since become indifferent to this. They were like livestock that had been reared in captivity for many years, and they'd long since gotten used to the reality of being slaughtered at will. Who asked? What if they were humans? They were born with misfortune. Chapter 3275. Lin Sun's eyes turned cold quietly. He took a stride forward and swiftly appeared in the sky above the group of mountains, and then he looked down from above. At this moment, no matter if they were feasting on meat, drinking wine, or cooking human flesh, the bodies of the 13,600 little demons that were scattered in the mountains had silently transformed into ashes that rustled and scattered all over the ground. The stench of blood that filled the air instantly evaporated into nothingness. Who? A roar came from a palace at the peak of a mountain. Immediately after, a huge blood-colored demon figure of thousands of feet soared into the sky. He had 9 lion heads that were as huge as houses, and his body was like a human, covered with blazing rainbow fur. Scarlet light rain fell from his body like a waterfall, and his aura was extremely terrifying. This 9-headed lion demon was actually not weaker than a boundless realm figure. A boundless realm existence of the human race. The nine-headed lion demon was stunned, as if in disbelief. This is a rare peerless medicine. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded, filled with surprise. A black cloud rolled, and a huge green snake appeared out of thin air, a pair of brown eyes flashing with a cold and cruel luster. The huge green snake's body was like a continuous mountain range, covered with strange and unpredictable rule power. To be able to cultivate to the boundless realm, this human is probably not simple. Brothers, be careful. A giant white bone bird came across the sky. Its huge skeleton was as long as 10,000 feet, and its pair of eyes were burning with green flames. As soon as these three boundless realm demons appeared, heaven and earth trembled, the wind and clouds changed, and the ferocious power was extremely terrifying. They looked at Lin Sun with solemn and scorching eyes. It was as if they saw a peerless medicine come to their door. They couldn't believe it. Originally, Lin Sun still had a lot of questions to ask. But now, he suddenly didn't want to say anything. Unable to calm down, he should kill quickly. Lin Sun raised his eyes and looked at the nine-headed lion demon that appeared first. At that moment, the nine-headed lion demon inexplicably panicked, feeling a fatal threat coming head-on. Roar! He let out a deafening roar and attacked first without hesitation. The 9 heads that were as huge as houses opened their mouths, spewing out billions of torrents of light, shrouding Lin Sun. Go! Lin Sun pinched his fingers, and a sword chi rose into the air. At that instant it simply seemed like the most brilliant wisp of sharp light in the world had appeared abruptly. It caused the heavens and the earth to dim down, and it caused the 9-headed lion's mental state to be instantly shattered. Pu. His 9 heads flew into the air, and blood sprayed out like a waterfall. But in the blink of an eye, his body and the head that had been tossed into the air turned into ashes and disappeared completely. A single slash had slain the 9-headed lion demon. That terrifying scene caused the azure snake and the enormous bird to be astounded, and they didn't dare hesitate to turn around and flee. Boom! Each of them stirred up a fiendish wind that tore through the void as they fled with all their might. But halfway through, the green snake's mountain-like body cracked apart piece by piece, as if it had been chopped into pieces by a sharp blade. Its miserable shriek had just sounded out when it stopped abruptly. At practically the exact same time, the enormous bone bird was fiercely grabbed by a large hand, and it was directly crushed into pieces, causing bone powder to rustle as it sprayed into the sky. But the 3 boundless realm demons were all killed by Lin Sun in the blink of an eye as if they were made of paper. Looking at the mountains again, those demons who were still alive were all stunned there, obviously scared out of their wits. Lin Sun didn't show any mercy and waved his sleeve. Endless Taoist light, like a sword rain falling from the sky, covered the mountains densely and slaughtered those demons on the spot. None of them survived. After doing all this, Lin Sun felt a little better. But when he looked at the tens of thousands of humans who were kept like livestock in the prison, he couldn't help but be stunned. Those people, whether men or women, old or young, didn't show any joy or excitement of being saved. Instead, they were all shivering with panic and uneasiness. In fact, none of them had even thought of escaping from that prison. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly realized that for the human clan in this world, perhaps from birth, they had already accepted the fact that they would become slaves, food, and great medicine. They had already been tamed and subdued to the bone. Apart from possessing intelligence and intelligence, they were no different from domesticated livestock. Even if he could save these people now, once he left, they were bound to become the food of those demons and monsters, and they would be at their beck and call. Unless he could kill all the demons and monsters in this world. But was that possible? Lin Sun looked up at the sky. This was the evil origin world, and the heavenly cycle Tao laws that were distributed here had long since been determined. Even if he could change it for a moment, he definitely couldn't change the human clan of this world forever. Lin Sun murmured, "Looks like the true leader of all evil in this world is the heavenly cycle Tao laws." Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun turned around and left. He realized that when the day came when his Tao could replace the heavenly cycle Tao laws of the evil origin world, it would be equivalent to eliminating the leader of all evil. In order to accomplish this, he had to understand everything about this world, sense the heavenly cycle Tao laws of this world, and find the source of chaos of this world. Only in this way could he truly replace it with his own Tao. In the following period of time, Lin Sun passed through numerous ferocious mountains and rivers, and he saw numerous tragic scenes of the human clan. It was like a purgatory for livestock. He entered many cities and countries, and all sorts of demon civilizations existed in those places. Regardless of whether it was the rules or laws, they were all set by the demons. On the other hand, the humans living in those cities didn't deserve to talk about status at all. They were inferior to slaves, and they were no different from livestock. But Lin Sun didn't see much resistance. Even some of the humans who had embarked on the path of cultivation were resigned to their fate when they encountered danger. Lin Sun had never seen any human try to change all of this. Lin Sun, who'd witnessed all of this, had the impulse to attack many times, but he'd restrained himself in the end. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, until half a year later, Lin Sun's figure appeared in the void. "From today onwards I, Lin Sun, shall rule over this world." As he murmured, Lin Sun's tall figure suddenly charged out with an unparalleled aura, and it rose all the way into the depths of the clouds. Bang! The universe Tao laws that belonged to this world instantly suffered an extremely huge impact, and it emanated extremely violent fluctuations before it started to collapse and collapse. At this moment, the countless living beings scattered throughout the evil origin world were alarmed, and all of them were terrified and uneasy. In their field of vision, the heavens and the earth were trembling while the heaven Tao was being destroyed. It was like the end of the world had arrived, and it was about to destroy the world. Even the humans in this world were panicking and terrified. But in next to no time, a completely new universe Tao law appeared and swept out. In practically the time of a few breaths, it enveloped the entire evil origin world. Only then did all the living beings in the world feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they calmed down from their terror. It seemed like all of this was just a false alarm, and nothing had changed. However, the countless humans scattered throughout the world felt an unprecedented force. It was like they'd broken through the shackles that were deeply rooted in their hearts, and they'd struggled free of the heavy brands that were pressing down on them. A wisp of inspiration arose in the hearts of every single one of them. It was a spark of resistance and fighting spirit. It was the desire to change the situation they were in. The strong would grow and multiply without end. Sooner or later, the human race would rise to prominence in this world and resist the world. They would sweep through all the demons and monsters that stood above them, and they would no longer have to suffer the humiliation of being trampled upon and enslaved by others. This was the grand Tao that Lin Sun had determined. If he was willing, he was entirely capable of using the universe Tao law that he'd grasped to sweep through all the demons and devils in the evil origin world. It was even to the extent that he could carry out heavenly punishment and trample all the demons and devils in the world beneath the feet of the human race. However, Lin Sun didn't do that. Without the demons and devils, the human race would still encounter other dangers. By trampling the demons and devils beneath their feet, the human race would have a chance to rise again sooner or later. At the bottom of it all, the evil of the evil origin world didn't lie in how formidable the demons and devils were, nor did it lie in how weak the human race was. It lay in whether the human race had the conviction to resist the evil that was born in this world. Indeed, Lin Sun had determined the grand Tao, and he could turn the tide and change everything in this world. However, once he left, the quintessence of chaos in the evil origin world was bound to rule over this world once more. At that time, everything would return to how it was in the past. Only by truly awakening the will to fight in the hearts of the human race and making the human race strong enough would they be able to avoid being enslaved forever. In Lin Sun's opinion, the reason why the human race was because they possessed the will to fight and strengthen themselves when they were oppressed. Without this spirit, how could the human race even be called a human? What Lin Sun was doing now was to leave behind a seed. In the future, as the human race rose and the human Tao flourished, the human race would be able to resist the evil of the evil origin world without fear for generations to come. This way, the human race would be able to live on with dignity. Beneath the sky. The evil origin is the source of all evil. Only by knowing the existence of evil will one know the value of kindness. Lin Sun pondered silently. Cultivators of different races would encounter different kinds of evil when they entered the evil origin world. Without a doubt, this was the influence of the quintessence of chaos in the evil origin world. Slaying the head of all evil did not mean destroying the evildoers. Instead, it meant giving all living beings in the world the will to fight and fight against evil. This was the crux of why all living beings in the world could live on without end. And this was only in the evil origin world. If it was in the outside world, then the so-called evil was just like the kindness in everyone's hearts. There was good and evil between cultivators and ordinary people, and it was very difficult to distinguish between them. Devil cultivators were not necessarily evil, and Buddhist cultivators were not necessarily kind. So long as all living beings were alive, they were bound to experience good and evil, right and wrong, and black and white. All of this was a part of life. For example, no matter how strong the beginning was, it was impossible for him to sweep away all the evil in the world, and it was impossible for him to make all living beings be kind forever. In short, good and evil, right and wrong, black and white, these were the understandings and concepts that every single living being possessed. The reason every single living being was different was because they possessed different understandings and concepts. In the eyes of cultivators, the difference in their understandings and concepts was the difference in the grand Taos they pursued. Some could coexist while others couldn't. After pondering for a long time by himself beneath the sky, Lin Sun's understanding of good and evil, right and wrong, and black and white grew deeper. He realized that the Tao laws of the evil origin world didn't lie in how evil it was, and it lay in the fact that the energy of the Grand Tao was related to the Tao of good and evil, black and white, right and wrong. Once one comprehended its profundities, then one would be able to possess the Tao laws of the world to punish evil and promote kindness, and it would allow all living beings in the world to distinguish between right and wrong. Chapter 3276. After a long time, Lin Sun returned to his senses. He looked at the nearby space and issued a command in his heart. Bang! An expanse of the origin energy of chaos surged out and fused into his body. This was the profundity of the origin of chaos in the evil origin world, and Lin Sun had refined it and fused it into his own cultivation. Half a year has passed in the blink of an eye. It's time for me to leave. Lin Sun took a step forward, and his figure instantly vanished into the seemingly empty divine gate. The profound God domain. According to the news, Lin Sun has already entered the fifth heaven realm, the evil origin world. With his cultivation, it's sufficient for him to pass through this world with ease. It's even to the extent that if nothing unexpected happens, he's probably already entered the sixth heaven realm, the Thousand Calamities realm. The Gond Division's Master of Destiny, Pei Tu, spoke in a low voice within a hall. The other 8 Masters of Destiny were silent, and their expressions flickered indeterminately. Now they were certain that Lin Sun had passed through the mortal transformation, calamity, gloom, and origin world. During this process, the envoys of destiny under the command of the Kuan Division, Sun Division, and Zhen Division had successively suffered heavy injuries. During this period of time, as the bad news continued to spread, the mood of the 9 masters of the 9 divisions of absolute beginning had become heavy and oppressive. In my opinion, this kid's combat strength isn't any weaker than the immeasurable Tao Lord. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to find anyone among the envoys of destiny under our command who can go against him. The Jun Division's Master of Destiny, Dubhe, spoke softly. How could they not be aware of this? Could it be that we're just going to give up just like that? The Sun Division's Master of Destiny, Feng He, frowned. He was very unwilling to give up just like that. What else can we do but give up? Send our envoys of destiny to their deaths? Someone spoke coldly. Everyone, there's no need to argue. Suddenly, the Gon Division's Master of Destiny, Pei Tu, spoke, and he drew the gazes of everyone to him. It's not impossible to deal with Lin Sun now, Pei Tu said in a low voice. For example, if you want to deal with Lin Sun in the 5th Heaven Realm, Thousand Tribulations Realm, you can start near the Heavenly Tribulation Platform. The Thousand Calamities Realm. Spirit's God Realm, 6th Heaven Realm. In this world, there were all kinds of dangerous and unpredictable tribulations. There were Tao tribulations that targeted one's cultivation, heart tribulations that targeted one's state of mind, and all kinds of strange killing tribulations. For example, a careless thought could provoke the heavenly demon tribulation, and a casual action could attract the karma tribulation. Each was different. Once cultivators entered the Heaven Tao tribulation platform, they had to overcome all sorts of tribulations, and if they wanted to leave, then they had to ascend the Heaven Tao tribulation platform and overcome 9 great tribulations. Only in this way would they be able to draw down the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. The 9 Destiny Tao Lords had traversed this dimension in the past, so they were naturally clearly aware that there was indeed a chance to ambush Lin Sun near the tribulation platform. However, this was also a huge risk. Wei Yun, how many mandate envoys does your Ken tribe have in the Thousand Tribulations realm? Pei Tu looked at one of them. This was a white-clothed man with a well-proportioned and slender figure. He wore a feathered crown, had slanted brows and starry eyes. He was the Kan clan's mandate Tao Lord, Wei Yun. 19. Wei Yun said, "The leader is Tao Master Myriad Mirror. I'll send him a message. As for whether he'll go all out, I can't guarantee." "That's enough." Pei Tu nodded and said, "If we succeed, then it'll be a great merit." The Thousand Tribulations realm. Lin Sun and Xia Ji walked side by side towards the easternmost area of this dimension. The rumored Heaven Tao Tribulation platform was located in that area. According to rumor, the chaos quintessence of this dimension contains the profundities of tribulation. A long time ago, the absolute beginning ruler obtained a strand of tribulation quintessence in this dimension, and he possessed the ability to control and utilize the great desolation tribulation. I just don't know if it's true. Lin Sun spoke softly on the way. The Thousand Tribulations realm was like the origin of all tribulations in the world, and it was filled with the energy of countless tribulations. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious about this. If the rumor about the absolute beginning ruler was true, then wouldn't it mean that he would have the opportunity to seek out the profundities of controlling the great desolation tribulation? Bang! As he spoke, a bolt of tribulation lightning suddenly descended from the sky. The gorgeous lightning wrapped in a terrifying aura of tribulation fell down, and it was boundlessly terrifying. That level of power could even threaten the existence of the boundless realm. However, Lin Sun had long been accustomed to it. With a wave of his sleeve, all the tribulation lightning that covered the sky was swallowed into Lin Sun's sleeve without leaving a single drop. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and turned it over. The tribulation lightning had been refined into a strand of gray and misty tribulation quintessence. Although it was as thin as a strand of hair, it was full of terrifying destructive power. But in Lin Sun's eyes, besides the destructive power, there was also a strand of mysterious vitality that was extremely difficult to detect. The so-called tribulation is the foundation that cultivators use to become strong. Overcoming tribulation without dying is like enduring rebirth, and it causes one's own cultivation to undergo a transformation. Thus, it causes the cultivator's own life to undergo a transformation, and it allows the cultivator to go from weak to strong and rise step by step. Lin Sun said softly. As he spoke, this strand of tribulation quintessence had been completely refined by him. Since entering the Thousand Tribulations realm, he and Xia Ji had encountered various tribulations along the way. Some were Tao tribulations that targeted their own cultivation path, some were mental tribulations that targeted their state of mind, and there were all kinds of unexpected killing tribulations, such as calamity tribulation, divine devil tribulation, and so on. In the beginning, Lin Sun was still very vigilant, but as he defeated and refined those tribulations again and again, his state of mind had become extremely calm and composed now. But if you fail to pass the tribulation, your soul will disperse. Xia Ji said. How can you become stronger without paying a price? The way of heaven is to reduce the surplus and make up the deficiency. Everything in the world is maintained in a delicate balance and opposition. Whether it's passing the tribulation or seizing the opportunity, you must bear the risk if you want to gain something. Lin Sun said casually. Some people think that the existence of tribulation is destruction and extinction. But if there is no tribulation, how can one become stronger? After a pause, Lin Sun said, This is somewhat similar to the nirvana ultimacy I have mastered. Passing the tribulation without dying is like going through nirvana. Xia Ji looked at Lin Sun speechlessly and said, What you say now is getting more and more boring. Lin Sun was speechless. Xia Ji was obviously not interested in these things at all. Lin Sun stopped talking about these mysterious topics and said, Let's find a chance to barbecue. Xia Ji's eyes lit up and she said, It should have been like this long ago. She thought about it and realized that she hadn't tasted Lin Sun's cooking ever since she entered the Myriad Wonder Dao ruins. Lin Sun also smiled. Xia Ji had always been so simple. She only cared about what she cared about, and the things that made her happy were always inseparable from eating and sleeping. As for the Tao and ambition, she had never thought about it at all. Sometimes, Lin Sun even envied Xia Ji. Her mind was simple and pure, so she didn't have so many troubles and worries. They talked as they moved forward, and they constantly encountered such tribulations along the way. 6 hours later, finally they saw the tribulation platform of heaven. It was 3 kilometers tall and completely black like ink. It was enveloped in a gray aura of chaos, and there were billions of lightning arcs surging in the area around it. Looking from afar, it seemed like the origin of the world's tribulations. At this moment, there were many figures in the area around the tribulation platform. All of them were existences in the boundless realm, and their auras were more terrifying than the last. In Lin Sun's opinion, those figures were only stronger than top existences like Qi Qianji and Yi Wuyin. After all, the tribulation realm was the 6th heaven realm, and the cultivators that could arrive here were bound to be stronger than those in the previous heaven realms. When Lin Sun and Xia Ji approached, they attracted the attention of many people near the tribulation platform. One of them immediately laughed and said, My young friend Lin Sun, Miss Xia Ji, I didn't expect you to come so quickly. Senior, we meet again. Lin Sun laughed as well. That person was Qi Qianji. Lin Sun. At this moment, the nearby boundless realm existences revealed expressions of understanding because they knew Lin Sun's identity. In the last few hundreds of years, news about Lin Sun had spread far and wide. Even though all of them had been trapped in this world for countless years, they'd more or less heard of Lin Sun's deeds. During their conversation, Lin Sun found out that Qi Qianji had been here for 100 years, yet he'd never passed the tribulation platform. According to Qi Qianji, the tribulations distributed on the tribulation platform varied from person to person. The stronger one was, the more terrifying the tribulations one would suffer. For example, some of those old fellows in this area had been trapped here for hundreds of thousands of years, yet they'd still been unable to pass through it until now. Bang! While they were chatting, a figure suddenly fell down from the tribulation platform. His entire body was covered in injuries, and he was in an extremely miserable state. As soon as he descended to the ground, he couldn't help but speak bitterly. He was only a step away again. Many cultivators in the surroundings felt a wave of pity. That old fellow has attempted it countless times, yet he'd been defeated by the 9th tribulation every single time. Qi Qianji let out a long sigh. Is there anyone else who intends to challenge the platform today? Someone asked. Everyone in the surroundings shook their heads. Lin Sun gazed at Xie Ji. Do you want to give it a try? All right. As she spoke, Xie Ji flashed directly towards the tribulation platform. Qi Qianji couldn't help but say, My friend, all of you have just arrived here and don't understand how terrifying the tribulation platform is. How can you rashly allow Miss Xie Ji to attempt it? Let her go. She'll be fine even if she fails. Lin Sun smiled. At this moment, Xie Ji's actions attracted the attention of everyone present. Swoosh! Her slender and graceful figure instantly vanished from the tribulation platform that was covered by a myriad of bolts of lightning. It was impossible to see what she was experiencing from the outside world. Even if they released their divine senses, it wouldn't work. Seeing this scene, the cultivators who'd originally planned to leave chose to stay and watch the final outcome. Qi Qianji took this opportunity to send a voice transmission. My friend, as far as I know, the 9 tribes of divine mandate envoys regard you as their enemy. In this tribulation realm, there are 19 Kan tribe envoys. Each of them is stronger than the other, especially their leader, Dao Master Wanjing. His combat strength is unfathomable. You must be careful. Chapter 3277. Qi Qianji's warning was full of concern and worry. He didn't know how Lin Sun fought his way from the mortal transformation realm to here. He also didn't know that Lin Sun was different from before. But the more he thought about it, the more touched Lin Sun felt. If it was anyone else, would they dare to warn him like Qi Qianji when they knew he was the enemy of the 9 tribes of Taichu? They would have drawn the line long ago. After all, the Taichu ruler's forces were spread across the entire ruins of Dao. How could an ordinary boundless realm cultivator dare to get involved? Senior, don't worry. Even if they don't come after me, I will go after them, Lin Sun whispered. Qi Qianji was startled. Don't force yourself. This is the ruins of Dao. It's different from the Sea of Destiny. Lin Sun smiled. Senior, do you think I'm that kind of arrogant person? Of course not. Qi Qianji answered without hesitation. Then he understood and couldn't help looking at Lin Sun. Are you sure you can win? Lin Sun nodded. Qi Qianji's eyes turned subtle. He didn't say anything else. He had learned about Lin Sun's actions back in the Sea of Destiny. He knew that Lin Sun must be confident if he dared to show such an attitude. That's right. It's only been a few years and he's already able to make it to the 1,000 Tribulations realm. His cultivation must have gone through a tremendous change, Qi Qianji thought. However, although he understood it, he couldn't see how powerful Lin Sun was now. 10 minutes later. Suddenly, in the sky above the heavenly tribulation platform that was completely enveloped by the aura of the chaotic calamity, a violent fluctuation appeared, and then a heavenly gate appeared. She passed the 9 tribulations? The crowd was in an uproar. The old monsters were all shocked. That woman had just arrived in the 1,000 Tribulations realm and passed the 9 tribulations. She attracted the Chaos Dao fruit and had the chance to leave. They almost couldn't believe it. Qi Qianji took a deep breath and murmured, as expected of an existence that controls the law of destiny. This Lady Xie Ji is truly amazing, Lin Sun. I'll wait for you in the world of creation. Xia Ji only had time to leave a sound before her figure disappeared into the gate of heaven. Witnessing all this, Lin Sun was very calm. Senior, have you ever heard of the primordium ruler obtaining a portion of the primal chaos essence in this world, allowing him to control the great silence lifeless tribulation? He asked. Of course I have. Qi Qianji said. It's said that it's very likely to be true. I've been in this realm for many years, and I've discussed this with many fellow Taoists. Almost all of them are certain that the origin of chaos in the thousand tribulations realm is related to the origin of tribulation. In the end, the deathless tribulation is a tribulation as well. If you're able to comprehend the quintessence of tribulation, then you'll naturally be able to control and utilize the deathless tribulation. Since that's the case, I'll give it a try myself. Lin Sun nodded and immediately stepped forward. Qi Qianji was stunned. He opened his mouth and closed it again. If Xia Ji could pass the 9 tribulations, how could Lin fail? The eyes of the practitioners nearby were immediately attracted by Lin Sun, and they all had a strange look on their faces. Xia Ji had given them a great shock before, and now Lin Sun was also planning to challenge the tribulation platform of heaven. How could they not be surprised? Whoosh! Lin Sun's figure flashed past the billions of lightning arcs, and he appeared on the tribulation platform of heaven. Only when he stood on the platform did he find that although the platform was thousands of meters high, it was divided into 9 stone steps, and each step was covered with a dense and astonishing aura of the origin of chaos. Boom! Before Lin Sun could continue sensing, the first major tribulation came. At that moment, Lin Sun felt that he had come to a strange world of nothingness, and the endless aura of the tribulation transformed into billions of stars, rushing towards him. Lin Sun felt that he was like a speck of dust. The difference between a speck of dust and a star was absolutely like the difference between heaven and earth. Yet now, a myriad of stars formed from the energy of the tribulation were charging towards him, and it was a scene that simply caused him to feel despair. Lin Sun didn't retreat and he just stood there. Boom! A star whizzed towards him and was smashed by his palm, and the light of tribulation scattered all over the sky. It seemed to be very casual, but then countless stars of tribulation bombarded Lin Sun's figure at once. Boom, boom! In this world of nothingness, there was a constant roar like rolling thunder. It could be clearly seen that in the place where Lin Sun originally stood, the dense stars exploded, setting off endless torrents of tribulation light, but then many more stars rushed towards him. As a result, the world was completely filled with the boundless tribulation light and the roar. No one knew how long it had been. Boom! A big abyss appeared. At first, it was only 30 meters wide, and then it became hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, tens of thousands of meters. In the process, the countless stars of tribulation were swallowed up like a clay ox falling into the sea. In the end, the world was swallowed up, and all the tribulation light and stars disappeared. The first major tribulation was swallowed up in one fell swoop. The big abyss shrank little by little in the roar, and finally turned into Lin Sun's tall figure. The tribulation light was flowing all over his body, and the breath of destruction was steaming. He seemed to be a god coming out of the tribulation with unpredictable power. At this time, all kinds of wonderful insights came to Lin Sun's mind, which belonged to the mystery of the origin of tribulation. But before he could understand it carefully, the second major tribulation came again. This major tribulation was a mysterious and unpredictable mental tribulation, which aimed at the 7 emotions and 6 desires. It was impossible to avoid, and he could only face it head-on. Even with Lin Sun's state of mind, he was under great pressure. But fortunately, it wasn't too serious. In just a moment, this mental tribulation was broken by Lin Sun. In this way, as soon as Lin Sun broke through a major tribulation, a new one would appear, and each of them could be called peerlessly horrible and extremely dangerous. But Lin Sun's coping strategy was extremely simple. He would face it head-on, defeat it, and then swallow its power. Although he had encountered many threats, he resolved them one by one. In the distance of the tribulation platform of heaven, Qi Qianji and the other cultivators were watching and waiting. Suddenly, a series of ripples appeared in the nearby void, followed by one figure after another appearing out of thin air. There were a total of 19 figures. The leader was a red-haired man in a python robe. Dazzling divine chains appeared all over his body, and his aura was extremely terrible. Tao Master Wanjing. He was a terrifying figure who was only a step away from boundless Tao Lord. The other 18 cultivators around him were all the Kan tribe's destined messengers. When they appeared, Qi Qianji's face suddenly changed, and the other cultivators present were also stiff. They had a hunch that Tao Master Wanjing and the others were obviously coming for Lin Sun. Everyone, don't delay any longer. Take advantage of his tribulation to kill him. Tao Master Wanjing waved his hand. The next moment, he and the other 18 destined messengers all took out a secret treasure. Boom! These secret treasures all surged with the power of the Great Silence Fatal Tribulation, and the aura released was so strong that it made all the cultivators present shudder. And under the control of Tao Master Wanjing and the others, these secret treasures swept through the air towards the tribulation platform of heaven in the distance. Boom! 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 At that moment, 19 kinds of secret treasures glowed, and the power of the Great Silence Fatal Tribulation poured out like an avalanche, rumbling towards the tribulation platform of heaven. All of a sudden, the world was in chaos, and all kinds of tribulation lights and roars surged and rolled, as if it was the end of the world. Witnessing all this, Qi Qianji's face turned pale and he was lost. Tao Master Wanjing and the others obviously came prepared. They wanted to take advantage of Lin Sun's tribulation to kill him in one fell swoop. When he looked at the other cultivators in the surroundings, all of them felt a chill run down their spines while their faces turned pale with astonishment. Tao Master Wanjing and the others were too ruthless. As soon as they arrived, they directly attacked Lin Sun. Lin Sun, who was in the middle of passing the tribulation, was affected by such an impact. Not to mention failing the tribulation, he was afraid that he would die in it. After a moment, the 19 secret treasures became dim, and the accumulated power of the Great Silence Fatal Tribulation was obviously on the verge of exhaustion. Seeing this, Tao Master Wanjing and the others scattered and put away the secret treasures. In this way, how can Lin Sun survive? A messenger of destiny said with a smile. He's too impatient. He just arrived in the tribulation realm, but he rashly went to the tribulation platform of heaven. He deserves this tribulation. Someone sneered. As they talked, their eyes were fixed on the tribulation platform in the distance. As time went by, the area around the tribulation platform gradually returned to its usual calm. But because of the chaotic aura, it was impossible to see the scene clearly. Is he dead? Someone couldn't help asking. He should have met a disaster. The fruit of chaos and the gate of heaven didn't appear. If he is still alive, even if he failed to pass the tribulation, he should have retreated from the tribulation platform, someone said in a low voice. Is he still alive? Has he been passing the tribulation? Someone frowned. If he can survive, I can even slit my own throat and commit suicide, Tao Master Wanjing said in a cold voice. A long time ago, they had used this method to interfere with an enemy's tribulation, causing him to die on the tribulation platform of heaven. Now they were doing the same thing. How could Lin Sun survive? But at this moment, an indifferent voice came from the tribulation platform of heaven, which was covered by the chaotic aura. Then you can kill yourself now. Everyone was silent. They couldn't believe their ears. Lin Sun was still alive? Qi Qianji, who was lost, suddenly became excited. He was still alive, still alive. A tall figure swept out from the tribulation platform of heaven. His white clothes were spotless, and his body was unscathed. It was Lin Sun. Dao Master Wanjing's face was extremely ugly and full of disbelief. This is impossible. How can you survive? The other messengers around him also changed their expressions. No one expected that Lin Sun could survive such a surprise attack. Chapter 3278. The entire place was silent, not a single sound could be heard. Lin Sun had walked out of the tribulation platform of heaven alive, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Dao Master Wanjing and the others found it hard to accept. Why? You said you wanted to commit suicide, but why didn't you do it? Lin Sun looked at Dao Master Wanjing and said sarcastically. Everyone's expression changed. Previously, Dao Master Wanjing said with certainty that if Lin Sun didn't die, he could even kill himself. Now, Lin Sun was indeed not dead. However, would Dao Master Wanjing keep his words? Many people looked at Dao Master Wanjing and saw his face was livid and gloomy. His eyes were surging with terrifying killing intent, but he obviously had no intention of committing suicide. However, no one dared to laugh at him. No matter what, Dao Master Wanjing was definitely the most terrifying existence in the Thousand Calamity realm. Do it! Dao Master Wanjing couldn't keep his face anymore and waved his hand to give the order. Boom! Beside him, the 18 Heavens Mandate envoys moved together. Each of them took out their treasures, activated their magic, and deduced all kinds of incredible great Dao phenomena. The world shook, divine light swept across, and the sound of Dao shook the sky. The mighty torrent of destruction swept towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood still with his hands behind his back. When the torrent of power that was enough to make everyone despair rushed towards him, it was blocked in front of him. It was as if it was blocked by an invisible moat. Then, boom! The torrent of energy that covered the heavens and the earth exploded and dispersed with a bang, and the rain of light that covered the sky vanished without a trace. Even the dozens of eternal Dao soldiers were shaken and flew out in disorder, wailing incessantly. This incredible scene stunned Qi Qianji and the other cultivators. Lin Sun didn't move at all, but he easily resolved the killing tribulation in front of him. Dao Master Wanjing and the others widened their eyes and felt their scalps go numb. How was this possible? How dare you plot against me with such little ability? You really don't know what's good for you. Lin Sun shook his head and seemed to be dispirited. While his voice was still echoing, a clear sword sound rang out. Sword chi appeared out of thin air, and waves of sword intent suddenly covered the 9 heavens and 10 earths, filling the void. Bang! Dao Master Myriad Mirror's body was the first to explode. He was crushed by the sword essence and his soul was scattered. Following that, the bodies of the other heavenly mandate envoys shattered one by one. They were killed on the spot by the sword chi that blotted out the sky, and both their bodies and souls were destroyed. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The domineering and bloody scene caused everyone to shiver in fear. Their state of mind was severely impacted. Even Qi Qianji was shocked. His heart was in turmoil. Before, he had expected that Lin Sun's cultivation had changed dramatically, but he didn't expect that Lin Sun could be so powerful. No wonder he was able to survive the Heavenly Tribulation Platform's Heavenly Tribulation Platform, Qi Qianji murmured. At this point, the 19 Ken tribe Heavenly Mandate envoys scattered throughout the 1,000 Tribulations realm had all perished. On the other hand, Lin Sun turned around and flashed back into the Tribulation Platform. Previously, he had been in the midst of the 7th major tribulation, but he had been ambushed by Dao Master Wanjing and the others, so he had no choice but to stop and deal with the situation. Now that all his enemies had been wiped out, he had to go through the tribulation again. Seeing Lin Sun's figure disappear completely, the old fellows in the field relaxed, and their expressions became extremely complicated. Brother Qi, you know Lin Sun the best. Can you tell us about him? Someone couldn't help but ask. The others also looked at Qi Qianji. Why not? However, I met Lin Sun in the Sea of Destiny, so my knowledge is limited. If you're interested, I'll tell you what I know, Qi Qianji said with a smile. Time passed slowly. On the tribulation platform, Lin Sun went through one major tribulation after another. When he broke through the 9th major tribulation, he had arrived at the highest point of the tribulation platform. A mass of chaotic origin power fell down and bathed him in it. In an instant, Lin Sun sensed the mystery of the tribulation origin, and comprehension surged into his mind like a tide. In a trance, he seemed to see a strange and incredible scene. The changes in the world and the passage of time in the world all carried the aura of tribulation. It was precisely because of the existence of tribulation that everything in the world revealed a form of opposition and balance between life and death, destruction and rebirth. Plants could grow tenaciously amidst wind, frost, rain, and snow, yet they would wither and die amidst wind, frost, rain, and snow as well. To plants, wind, frost, rain, and snow were tribulations. Some could transcend tribulations and transform, yet others would wither and die amidst them. This was the opposition and balance between life and death, destruction and rebirth. Based on this, it was deduced that everything in the world was the same, and tribulations existed in everything. Moreover, all sorts of unbelievable variables appeared amidst the passage of time in the world, and they were related to the various tribulations. For example, if someone sought fortune, then they had to bear the corresponding risk. This sort of risk was a tribulation. Those who dealt with the tribulation would obtain fortune, whereas those who encountered the tribulation and failed would naturally obtain nothing. Similarly, the birth, aging, illness, death, love, hatred, and affection of ordinary people all had tribulations within them, and there was a difference between good and bad outcomes. It was even to the extent that when cultivators stepped onto the path of cultivation, there were even more tribulations. There was the tribulation of the Tao, the tribulation of the heart, and the tribulation of slaughter. All the ups and downs could be considered to be tribulations. No matter if it was the phenomena of the world, everything in the world, or even ordinary people and cultivators, so long as they experienced tribulation and lived, then they would be able to realize rebirth. Once they experienced tribulation and perished, then there was no need to talk about it. On the other hand, the quintessence of tribulation was the combination of two types of energy, destruction and transformation. When cultivators experienced tribulation lightning to break through, then the tribulation lightning was filled with the most direct energy of destruction and transformation. As he comprehended more and more profundities of the quintessence of tribulation, Lin Sun faintly came to a slight understanding. The so-called transition of an era was a tribulation that targeted a civilization of an era. When a civilization was sufficiently strong, then it would be able to survive the transition of era and return to the ruins of creation. Conversely, it would completely vanish from the world. On the other hand, the 5 signs tribulation that targeted ordinary cultivators and the deathless tribulation that targeted boundless realm cultivators were the same. Those who overcame it could possess even more formidable energy of the Grand Tao, and they could allow their cultivation to undergo a transformation. If they were unable to overcome it, then they would perish. However, the tribulation of the transition of an era ought to be called the most terrifying tribulation in the world. Once this tribulation appeared, a myriad of tribulations would follow, and it would cause countless tribulations to arise at the right time, like the 5 signs tribulation, the deathless tribulation, and so on and so forth. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun finally understood that the source of the deathless tribulation that caused boundless realm cultivators in the world to tremble in fear was within the ruins of profundity. Precisely speaking, this tribulation came from the forbidden area of profundity. The forbidden area of profundity was called the forbidden area of life by absolute beginning, and it was extremely likely that it contained the profundities of the origin of life, the Tao of life. On the other hand, the deathless tribulation was a great tribulation that targeted the lives of boundless realm cultivators, and it could be discerned from the word life in its name. So it wasn't strange that the source of this tribulation came from the forbidden area of profundity. Moreover, Lin Sun was able to comprehend these profound auras within the tribulation quintessence of Calamity Realm, and he finally knew why Absolute Beginning was able to borrow and control the energy of the deathless tribulation. The reason was that Absolute Beginning had once comprehended the profundities of the tribulation quintessence, and this was equivalent to possessing the ability to control the myriad of tribulations in the world. This was precisely the truth of the mastermind that Chen Shi, Chen Linkong, the master of the heart core, and Golden Cicada were painstakingly searching for. The grass snake is gray, and the veins are thousands of miles long. Who would have thought that the ruins of profundity that boundless realm cultivators viewed as a place to avoid the deathless tribulation would actually be the source of this tribulation? At this moment, an indescribable emotion surged within Lin Sun's heart. Things in this world were often so inconceivable. Since entering the ruins of profundity of Tao, Lin Sun had already solved many mysteries in his heart. When he was in the mortal transformation realm, it made him realize that the power of Tao creation existed in this world, and he witnessed the supreme elegant demeanor of Chen Shi, Absolute Beginning, and that swordsman. In the Calamity Realm, it made him realize that there was a connection between the ruins of profundity of Tao and the ruins of creation. At this point, the connection between the four great ruins of Tao had been clearly seen through by him. In the dark world, it allowed him to determine that the reason terrifying existences like Absolute Beginning and Chen Shi had stayed in the profound God domain was very likely because they'd encountered a bottleneck in their cultivation. In other words, they'd already walked to the end of the eternal path, and they'd started to explore a higher path. The reason their cultivation hadn't been able to break through was because they hadn't truly stepped onto that higher path. In the origin world, it allowed Lin Sun to understand the origins of the Grand Devourer Abyss, the origins of the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, and information about the Life Tao. Moreover, it allowed Lin Sun to completely understand that the reason he was regarded as a variable was because of the connection between the profundities of Nirvana and the Life Tao. In the evil origin world, it allowed Lin Sun to distinguish the paths of good and evil, and the principles of right and wrong. On the other hand, in the Calamity Realm, it allowed him to see through the profundities of the quintessence of tribulation, and he understood the origin of the deathless tribulation. It could be said that the mysteries that had accumulated in Lin Sun's heart in the past were being revealed one by one after he entered the ruins of profundity of Tao. How could he not sigh with emotion? After a long time, Lin Sun awoke from his state of comprehension. The reason the deathless tribulation is unable to harm me is because the profundities of Nirvana are sufficient to deal with this tribulation that targets life. Now, I've grasped the profundities of the quintessence of tribulation just like the Absolute Beginning ruler. Once I arrive at the profound God domain, then so long as I'm able to sense the aura within the forbidden area of profundity, I'll be able to utilize the energy of the deathless tribulation as well, Lin Sun muttered in his heart. On the other hand, with the attainments and wisdom of Master, Senior Chen Shi, and the others, they should have seen through all of this a long time ago. Lin Sun shook his head, and then his gaze pierced through the gray and hazy chaotic tribulation energy to look at Qi Qianji, who stood in the distance. Senior, I'll be going on ahead. Lin Sun cupped his hands from afar, and his voice swept through the heavens and the earth. Take care, young brother. Qi Qianji cupped his hands, and he was unable to calm down in his heart. Even though Lin Sun had surpassed him in the ocean of destiny, the gap between them wasn't huge. Yet now, he suddenly realized that it would probably be impossible for him to catch up to Lin Sun's footsteps for the rest of his life. The name of a world was changed, and the seventh world was changed from world creation to world determination. Chapter 3279. The Profound God Domain. Within a hall, the Kan tribe's master of destiny, Wei Yun, had a gloomy expression as he said, Tao Master Myriad Mirror and the others, have failed as well. A wisp of gloominess couldn't help but arise between the brows of the other heavenly mandate lords. It had only been less than a year and a half since he'd entered the ruins of Tao, yet Lin Sun had successively traversed the mortal transformation world, calamity world, dark world, origin trace world, evil origin world, and calamity world. This sort of speed could be said to be world-shocking. After all, there were numerous cultivators trapped in those heavenly realms, and some had been trapped for hundreds of thousands of years. However, Lin Sun was able to kill his way out of Calamity World and arrive at the Tao world defined by the seventh heaven in a year and a half. This speed could naturally be said to be terrifying. All those years ago, when the heavenly mandate lords tried to traverse the 9 heavenly realms of the divine domain, they'd spent at least 1,000 years. Compared with this, Lin Sun's speed of passing through the barriers was simply shocking. He's already arrived at the 7th heaven. If this continues, it's very likely that he'll arrive at the 9th heaven, the bound of universe. Even though the core and elite forces of our 9 divisions are stationed in the bound of universe, how formidable will Lin Sun's cultivation be when he arrives there? The Koan tribe's master of destiny, Qin Yangzi, let out a long sigh. At this moment, he felt completely helpless. I'm sure that Lin Sun's current combat strength is absolutely not inferior to the boundless Tao Lord, and it might even surpass him. Under such circumstances, dealing with him would simply be no different than courting death by sending those envoys of destiny under my command. The Sun tribe's master of destiny, Kong He, spoke in a low voice. The atmosphere grew more and more oppressive, and the hearts of the 9 heavenly mandate lords grew heavier. No one had expected that Lin Sun would traverse the heavenly mandate realms so quickly, nor had they imagined that his cultivation in the boundless realm would be formidable to such an extent. What should we do? Everyone's expressions changed indeterminately. After a long time, the Qian tribe's master of destiny, Pei Tu, sighed and said, "If only the young miss was here at this moment." Heya had been left by the sect master's side, and there was no news of him until now. This caused the heavenly mandate lords like them to seem to have lost their backbone. Suddenly, an extremely tall figure appeared in front of the main hall. It was an old ape with a pair of swords on its back. It was dressed in gray clothes, and because it was so big and tall, it gave off an extremely oppressive feeling just by standing there. Ape Ancestor. The 9 heavenly mandate Tao lords stood up in unison and bowed solemnly. Feng Juezi, pass the order. Don't let the emissaries of the Li tribe in the Tao-fixing realm deal with Lin Sun. The ape ancestor looked at one of them and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Feng Juezi accepted the order. He wore a red robe, his hair was gray, yet his skin was smooth like a baby's, and he assumed the position of the Li Division's path of destiny. Ancestor Ape, if we do this, won't we be boosting the morale of others and diminishing our own? Pei Tu couldn't help but ask. Ape Ancestor ignored him and looked at another person. Qin Fu, how many mandate envoys does your Gen tribe have in the 8th heaven realm, the Tao development world? Qin Fu. The Gen Division's Destiny Tao Lord was the only female among the 9 Destiny Tao Lords. 7. Qin Fu answered swiftly. She wore a black dress, and her skin was snow-white and crystalline. Her appearance was exquisite and peerlessly beautiful, and her eyes carried a myriad of flirtatious feelings. That's enough. Ape Ancestor said, pass the order. Tell these 7 to mobilize all their forces to investigate the favored that will appear in the Tao development world in the next period of time. Once they notice them, there's no need to ask about their origins and just annihilate them directly. Qin Fu accepted the order solemnly. Yes. The other Destiny Tao Lords seemed to have come to an understanding at this moment, and they spoke successively. The Tao development world is indeed the best opportunity to annihilate Lin Sun. At that time, no matter which cultivator Lin Sun becomes in this world or what identity he possesses, His cultivation is bound to be within the lower 5 realms. The only problem is how to find him, said Pei Tuesday. Pei Tu said, however, it ought to not be difficult for those 7 emissaries of the Gen tribe. They've already become eternal figures of the Tao development world since a very long time ago. Even though their cultivations are inferior to the boundless realm they originally possessed, annihilating a figure at the lower 5 realms is still an extremely easy matter. The Tao development world was very special. Once a cultivator entered it, it was like seizing the body of a cultivator to become a cultivator of this world and possess the name, cultivation, and identity of this cultivator. For example, once Lin Sun entered this world, he would transform into a cultivator of this world and possess the identity and cultivation of this cultivator. It was similar to seizing the body of a cultivator to achieve rebirth. From this moment onward, Lin Sun would become a favored of this world. If he wanted to leave the Tao development world, then he would have to cultivate and develop an extraordinary grand Tao that belonged to his new identity. Once his cultivation broke through to the eternal realm, he would be able to draw over the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. Something worthy of mentioning was that to the cultivators of the Tao development world, the supreme grand Tao in the world was the eternal path towards the Tao development world. Exactly. The 7 destiny emissaries of the Gen division possess monstrous power and influence in the Tao development world. They control the top powers in the world, and they're comparable to the 7 overlords of this world. So long as they give the order, then it ought to be very easy to find Lin Sun's new identity in the Tao development world. Qing Yangzi was excited as well, and he said, normally speaking, as a favored, one only possesses a cultivation of the lower 5 realms. If one wants to leave, then one must improve one's cultivation as soon as possible because numerous inconceivable changes would occur to one's body. Moreover, this sort of unusual changes would be noticed by the acquaintances of the favored, and it would cause an extremely great commotion. At that time we only have to look for the commotion at the first possible moment, and we'll surely be able to determine the identity of the favored and annihilate him. All of them, the Destiny Tao Lords, had entered the Tao development world in the past and appeared as favored. They'd undergone a path of cultivation that was like seizing the body of a favored, so they were naturally the most clearly aware of the situation within. All of you weren't so complacent earlier. The ape ancestor spoke coldly. Pei Tu and the others instantly revealed embarrassed expressions. Earlier, they'd been completely awed by Lin Sun's speed of passing through the Tao development world, causing their hearts to be oppressed and heavy, and they couldn't help but feel helpless. Someone couldn't help but ask, Ape Ancestor, what if Lin Sun is able to leave the Tao development world alive? Everyone was stunned, and they looked at the Ape Ancestor in unison. Then we'll talk about it when he's able to arrive at the universe dimension alive. The Ape Ancestor turned around and left after he spoke these words. Lin Sun still didn't know that a calamity was already waiting for him in the 8th world, the Tao development world. At this moment, he and Xia Ji had just entered the 7th world. The 7th world was called the Tao world. When cultivators entered it, they would see an unknown world. The phenomena of this world were in a nameless state, and every single one of them was something that had never been recorded in the outside world. What cultivators had to do was determine the Tao for the phenomena of this world. It was just like creating words and defining their pronunciations and meanings. Every single thing had its attribute, and the defined name should contain its principle so that it could correspond to the heaven Tao and conform to its charm. Just like the Tao was originally nameless, but the strong named it Tao. The term Tao was also defined by it. Since ancient times, mountains, rivers, grass, trees, the sun, the moon, and the stars, all of these things didn't have names in the beginning either. In the Tao development world, it wasn't as simple as just a name that was determined by cultivators. Instead, they had to give those things that contained Tao marks names and give them attributes and profundities, so that these things and the great Tao could conform and relate to each other, thus forming a complete system of the great Tao. It sounded simple, yet when it was actually done, it was extremely complicated and vast. It required a deep understanding and control of the Tao laws of the world in this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Thus, when the Tao was determined, the attributes and profundities contained within everything in the world would conform and be related to the Tao laws of the world. Xia Ji, I'm afraid we'll have to be separated for a while when we arrive at the Tao Development Mountain. Lin Sun spoke casually on the way. When they arrived at the Tao Development Mountain, they would be able to sense the quintessence of chaos in this world, allowing cultivators to enter an unknown world to undergo Tao determination. Once they succeeded in Tao determination, they would directly enter the eighth world, the Tao Development World. Xia Ji said without hesitation, "Then let's meet in the Tao Development World." The Tao Development World. Lin Sun recalled the information he'd inquired about the Tao Development World earlier, and he pondered deeply before he said, "In my opinion, if we arrive at the Tao Development World, it's better not to expose our identities for now, and it's best not to meet them." Once they entered the Tao Development World, they would transform into cultivators of this world and possess a completely new identity and name. Once they made some unusual actions, it would be extremely easy for their friends and relatives to notice it, and it would even cause some commotion. Under such circumstances, once they were noticed by their enemies, the consequences would be severe. Lin Sun told all of this to Xia Ji, and then he said, "It wouldn't be too late to consider meeting them when we possess the strength of the immortal realm." The highest realm in the Tao Development World was the immortal realm. At that time, even if they were noticed by their enemies who were favored, they wouldn't be afraid to fight them. Xia Ji thought for a moment and agreed. As they spoke, they arrived near Tao Determination Mountain. This mountain was extremely steep and lofty. When looked at from afar, it seemed like a dragon soaring into the sky, and its entire body was covered in gray and hazy chaotic energy. When Lin Sun and Xia Ji arrived, there were only a dozen or so figures scattered around Tao Determination Mountain, and they were either sitting or standing. Obviously, they'd stayed here for an extremely long time. "Hey, after so many years, there are finally new fellow Taoists," someone exclaimed in surprise. Many gazes were filled with curiosity as they looked at Lin Sun and Xia Ji, who were approaching. "I'm Lin Sun. Greetings, seniors." Lin Sun glanced at them and slightly cupped his hands in salute. "You're Lin Sun?" someone blurted out in surprise. There was a commotion in the surroundings. Obviously, these old fellows had heard of things related to Lin Sun. Lin Sun thought, as expected, "It's easy to handle." He asked directly, "May I ask, seniors, how many destined envoys are there in the Tao Development World now?" His words caused the atmosphere in the surroundings to fall silent. Many people's expressions changed slightly. Chapter 3280. The atmosphere was heavy and no one spoke. Old people like them were naturally clearly aware of how terrifying the emissaries of the Mandate of Heaven were. They weren't afraid of the emissaries of the Mandate of Heaven, but they were afraid of the powers they belonged to. Under such circumstances, who would dare to get involved? Seeing this, Lin Sun was not surprised. However, he was very clearly aware that these cultivators had been trapped here all year round, so it was bound to be impossible for all of them to have no enmity with the emissaries of the heavens. Indeed, a moment later, he heard a voice transmission. "Little friend, there are 11 heavenly mandate messengers from the Dui tribe in this realm. The leader is called the Heavenly Venerable Six Sons. They are currently entrenched in, soon." Lin Sun got the information he wanted. He did not reveal the identity of the person who sent the voice transmission, nor did he look at him. He directly left the place with Xia Ji. Having learned his lesson from the surprise attack in the Thousand Tribulations realm last time, Lin Sun decided to strike first to gain the upper hand. He would wipe out the enemies first to avoid future troubles, and then go to the Dingdao mountain to fix the path. Beside a large lake, the 6 sons, heavenly venerable, and the other heavenly mandate envoys were stationed there. For many years they had been cultivating here. Master said that we shouldn't deal with Lin Sun. Should we just sit back and do nothing when Lin Sun comes to this world? A tall man in bronze armor said with a frown. The Lord has his own arrangements. We just need to follow his orders. The 6 sons, heavenly venerate, said indifferently. He was like an old Taoist priest, wearing a high crown and robe, holding a horsetail whisk in his hand. My lord thinks that we are no match for Lin Sun even if we join forces. Someone let out a long sigh, and his tone carried a hint of dissatisfaction. How about I test Lin Sun's background? If he really can't be defeated, then it's fine. But if he can't even withstand a single blow, then it'll be too easy for us. Someone was eager to try. The 6 young heavenly venerable fell silent for a moment before saying, "Shall we give it a try?" "Right, let's give it a try." Many people revealed looks of anticipation. People like them, being able to enter this death-fixing world, they were naturally far from what ordinary boundless realms could compare to. At this moment, laughter rang out in the distance. "Let's give it a try." While the voice was still echoing, the figures of Lin Sun and Xie Ji had already swept over from afar. Heavenly venerable 6 sons' pupils constricted. They had yet to make a move, but their opponents had already come knocking on their door. The others were also surprised and caught off guard. "Lin Sun, are you going to fight with us?" The 6 sons, heavenly venerable, could not help but ask. He still couldn't imagine how confident Lin Sun was that he dared to come to him on his own initiative. "If I didn't come, I'm afraid you guys wouldn't be satisfied either." Lin Sun said indifferently, "Cut the crap. Do you want to have a try one by one or together?" The 6 sons, heavenly venerable, and the others frowned. Lin Sun was so confident that he took the initiative to declare war, which made them all feel that something was wrong. "Let's go together. If anything goes wrong, retreat immediately." Heavenly venerable 6 Yang took a deep breath and sent a voice transmission to the others. "All right. That's all. With the strength of the 11 of us, if we still can't do anything to the 2 of them, there is indeed no need to continue fighting." The eyes of the others flickered, and they all agreed. The next moment, boom! The 6 sons, heavenly venerable, and the others attacked together. They immediately used all their strength. All sorts of Tao weapons and Tao techniques filled the sky, creating a violent torrent that covered the sky. "This time let me do it. Remember, don't interfere." As Xie Ji spoke, she had already teleported away. Lin Sun was stunned and then shook his head helplessly. He could only watch from afar. Clang! Xie Ji's slender figure was covered in a hazy rain of light. As the bone spear in her hand stabbed out, the river of fate surged out in the sky, mighty and endless. Boom! A great battle broke out. The world shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. This battle only lasted for a few breaths before deaths began to appear. Puff! Xie Ji's bone spear easily pierced through an opponent. His body exploded with a bang and was drowned by the river of fate. The expressions of the 6 sons, heavenly venerable, and the others changed abruptly. They wanted to escape without hesitation. However, the sea of fate was so vast that it covered the entire world. It also blocked the 6 sons, heavenly venerables' escape route. When they tried to break out with all their strength, they were hit by the power of the river of fate and felt extremely uncomfortable. Puff! Taking advantage of this opportunity, another opponent was stabbed to death by Xie Ji's bone spear. It was clean and neat. This made the 6 sons, heavenly venerable, and the others tremble. They were all stimulated to the point of going all out. But it was destined to be in vain. In the following time, Xie Ji's figure constantly flashed in the battlefield, and the bone spear in her hand stabbed out one after another. Then, one opponent after another fell and was drowned by the river of fate. In just a moment, the 11 messengers of destiny, including the 6 sons heavenly venerable, were killed on the spot one after another. None of them survived. If other cultivators were to witness these bloody scenes, they would definitely be terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies. But from beginning to end, Lin Sun, who had a panoramic view of all this, seemed very calm. This was originally a battle with a great disparity in strength. After all, with Xia Zhi's current combat strength, it was not difficult for her to kill opponents at the level of the infinite Tao Lord. I thought they were very powerful. In the distance, Xia Zhi returned with a trace of disappointment on her beautiful face. Let's go. Lin Sun smiled and turned away with Xia Zhi. An hour later, the two returned to the front of Dingdao Mountain. More than a dozen old guys near Dingdao Mountain were very surprised. Why did they come back so soon? Taoism Peer Lin, did you come back victorious? Someone couldn't help asking. Lin Sun smiled and said, I don't think you will see those messengers of destiny in this world in the future. Before his voice died away, he and Xia Zhi had already rushed to Dingdao Mountain out of thin air. In a flash, their figures were covered by the thick power of chaos and disappeared. Hearing Lin Sun's words, those old guys were stunned at first, and then they looked at each other in horror. With a strange wave, Lin Sun appeared in an unknown world. It was as if he had come to the beginning of chaos and the beginning of the primitive world. Between the boundless mountains and rivers, there were plants that he had never seen before. Even the birds and beasts that were distributed between heaven and earth were things that he had never seen or heard of before. Lin Sun looked around and looked at this unknown world for a long time before withdrawing his eyes. He found a blue stone at random and sat cross-legged, got rid of all distracting thoughts, and began to comprehend the power of the way of heaven, rule of this world. Only by mastering the mysteries of the way of heaven could he endow all things in the world with different attributes and mysteries when he carried out the way of heaven and earth, so that they could resonate with the way of heaven and earth and form a complete and orderly world of Tao. Time flew by day after day. During this period, a little beast with snow-white fur, which looked like a deer but was not a deer, appeared and curiously looked at Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the blue stone. It seemed that the little beast found Lin Sun was not in danger, so it stayed in the nearby area. During the day, it played on the mountain, and at night, it slept close to the blue stone where Lin Sun was sitting. Lin Sun naturally noticed the little beast, but he didn't pay attention to it and meditated on the way of heaven. One evening, the snow-white little beast fled in panic from afar. One of its legs was limping, and it was drenched in blood. Behind it, there was an enormous python-like beast that had a pair of green wings chasing after it. The giant beast flapped its wings and set off gusts of wind. It seemed that it was not in a hurry to kill the snow-white beast. It just chased it all the way like a cat playing with a mouse. When it was less than 300 meters away from Lin Sun, the snow-white beast let out a hurried and anxious cry. And it crouched on the ground, as if it had completely given up. At this time, Lin Sun, who had been meditating like a clay statue, suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart. He could tell that the cry of the snow-white beast was not asking for help, but reminding and urging him to run away quickly. What moved Lin Sun even more was that the little beast knew that it was injured and could not survive, so it decided to feed itself to the beast to buy time for Lin Sun. Howl, the giant python rushed down from the sky, opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the snow-white beast. If I let a little fellow like you die, how would I be able to live with my conscience? Lin Sun opened his eyes quietly. At this moment, the body of the fierce beast seemed to be fixed. It let out a horrified roar, and then its huge body fell to the ground with a thud, shivering all over. Although you've formed a bad relationship with me, you're still a living being born in this world after all. I'll spare your life. However, from today onwards, your clan will never be able to surpass the descendants of this little fellow's clan. Lin Sun waved his sleeves and didn't care whether the huge beast understood him or not. The huge body of the huge beast was teleported away and disappeared among the mountains and rivers in the far distance. At this time, the snow-white little beast seemed to wake up from a dream. It struggled to get up and looked around. Finally, it fixed its eyes on Lin Sun and let out a joyful cry. It limped over and walked back and forth around the cyan boulder under Lin Sun, looking excited and happy. "Since you have a good relationship with me, I can't treat you badly." Lin Sun smiled and raised his hand. The injured leg of the snow-white beast recovered as before. At the same time, Lin Sun pointed his right index finger at the place between the eyebrows of the snow-white beast. A magical power of property was born in the body of the snow-white beast and imprinted in its bone patterns. This was the bestowing of property and mystery, so that it could sense and agree with the rules of nature. From now on, it was no longer an ordinary species, and could go on the road of cultivation transformation. At the same time, Lin Sun named this beast Snow Spirit Deer. Snow Spirit Deer blinked its eyes and felt that it seemed to have changed, but it couldn't feel anything. But soon, it didn't care about this and fell asleep comfortably beside the bluestone where Lin Sun sat. From this moment on, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness spread in the rules of nature of this unknown world like a big net. Soon, everything in this unknown world was reflected in Lin Sun's mind. He said softly, "From today on, I, Lin Sun, will determine the rules of this world, endowing it with property and mystery. I hope all living beings in the world can sense the rules of nature and create a cultivation civilization for future generations." This voice was like the decree of a ruler of the Tao of the heavens. Every single word resounded through this unknown world and reverberated through the world. Chapter 3281. When the voice faded away, everything in the world suddenly glowed with different vitality and colors. Every grass, every tree, every bird and beast seemed to have intelligence, showing unprecedented charm and wonderful appearance. Everything that was unknown was being defined. They had their own names and attributes, and they contained completely different profundities. The veins and roots of the flowers and trees all showed traces of the Great Way, and the fur, blood and bones of the birds and beasts also showed mysterious charm of the Great Way. In the end, even the rocks, gravel, flying mist, waterfall, flame, breeze and other things also showed mysterious Tao marks. This process lasted for a full 7 days. In the end, Lin Sun was still not satisfied. He gave all the mysteries of the Great Way he had comprehended before, such as the Tao of good and evil, the truth of right and wrong, and so on, to the invisible traces of the world. In this way, all the spirits in the world could be nurtured, so that they could comprehend the mystery of it silently. This should be enough. From now on, this world will be called Tao Abyss World. On the bluestone, Lin Sun stood with his hands behind his back. At this moment, he suddenly had a lot of enlightenment. Wasn't the process of determining Tao creating a complete cultivation civilization? All the spirits in the world felt the Tao of heaven and rose in accordance with the Qi of the Great Way. With the passage of time, all kinds of incredible cultivation systems would be evolved, and then a real cultivation civilization would be evolved. Determining Tao is so wonderful. If one day I can create a Tao that has never existed in the world, what incredible phenomenon will it show? Lin Sun couldn't help thinking. After a long time, he collected his thoughts and was about to leave. Suddenly, he noticed that the snow spirit deer beside the bluestone had woken up and was staring at him with a pair of clear eyes. It seemed to be aware that he was about to leave, and there was a trace of reluctance in its eyes. Compared with before, this little guy had a unique and transcendent spirituality, as if it had awakened real wisdom from ignorance. "Little guy, if there is a chance in the future, I will go to the ruins of fate to find you," Lin Sun said with a smile. He had already comprehended the origin power of chaos in the Tao-fixing realm. He understood that this unknown world that he had fixed would be like the world of the great path that he had created in the disaster realm. In the future, it would appear in the civilization of the era that was born in the ruins of creation. In other words, when Lin Sun left the ruins of Tao and headed to the ruins of fortune, he would be able to sense the Tao abyss world that he'd determined. As for whether he could see the snow spirit deer again, that would depend on whether it was still alive. The snow spirit deer seemed to have plucked up its courage and jumped up, rubbing its head against Lin Sun's leg. Then it knelt down on its forelegs and kowtowed to Lin Sun, crying incessantly. Lin Sun understood that the little guy was thanking him for his enlightenment. Go and pursue your own Tao. Lin Sun laughed and waved. His figure disappeared into thin air. Whoosh! At the top of Dingdao Mountain, Lin Sun appeared and saw Xia Ji waiting there. Have you succeeded? Lin Sun asked. Xia Ji nodded and said in a clear voice, We're going to the Tao developing world next. You must be careful. I suspect that those enemies will definitely not miss this opportunity to deal with you. You too. Lin Sun rubbed her little head. Xia Ji raised her little face and pointed to her forehead. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he immediately understood. He held up Xia Ji's beautiful little face and kissed her smooth and translucent forehead. Then, Lin Sun blinked mischievously and said, Are you satisfied now? Xia Ji said, No, you haven't had a child with me. Lin Sun was speechless. Xia Ji revealed a mischievous and brilliant smile and said, I'm just teasing you. I'll consider whether I want to have a child with you after you marry me. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked into a gate of heaven and disappeared. Lin Sun was stunned, and a strange emotion surged in his heart. Xia Ji was probably not as ignorant as before. At least, she should have understood those things about having a child that couldn't be said. After that, Lin Sun smiled and shook his head before taking a stride forward, and the gate of heaven opened by itself. On this day, Lin Sun comprehended the profundities of the quintessence of chaos and left the Tao-determining world swiftly. The eighth heaven of the spirit's domain was called the Tao-developing world. The cultivators that entered this world seemed as if they'd undergone a path of reincarnation, and all of them were called favored. The Celestial Sect, a second-rate sect of the Tao-developing world that resided on Fengxia Spirit Mountain. Sect Master, if your martial uncle Qing Feng dares to cause trouble like this again in the future, then there's no need to ask me. Just directly ground him. Within a hall on Fengxia Spirit Mountain, the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect, Qing Heng, gnashed his teeth as he spoke with resentment. There was a bed before him, and the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect, Qing Feng, was lying on the bed. However, his face was bruised and swollen, and he seemed to be in a miserable state. He'd fallen into a coma. Yes. The Celestial Sect's master, Fu Yunzi, hurriedly agreed, but his expression was slightly strange. 3 days ago, Qing Feng once again went to the Celestial Sect to see the woman that he'd been infatuated with for 900 years. In the end, Qing Feng was blocked by the disciples of the Celestial Sect before he could enter the mountain gate of the Celestial Sect. Qing Feng used his identity as the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect and wanted to force his way in. In the end, he was violently beaten by a disciple of the Celestial Sect who was only at the reincarnation developing realm. He was beaten black and blue and directly fell into a coma. In the end, he was still sent back to the Celestial Sect by the Celestial Sect. When this matter came out, the entire Celestial Sect felt humiliated, and the entire sect felt humiliated. But there was no other way. Who asked Qing Feng to be the Supreme Elder? Even the sect master, Fu Yunzi, couldn't arbitrarily punish him, so he could only ask the Supreme Elder, Qing Heng. Sure enough, Qing Heng also felt that his old face had lost all light and was extremely furious. So, there was this scene before his eyes. After thinking about it, Qing Heng warned again, remember, use the best spiritual medicine to heal your martial uncle's injuries. Don't let him leave behind any hidden dangers. When he was young, he and Qing Feng entered the Celestial Sect on the same day of the same month. Although they were brothers, they were no different from real brothers. Although he resented Qing Feng for making a fool of himself, Qing Heng was also distressed to see him seriously injured. "Don't worry, martial uncle. I will take good care of martial uncle Qing Feng," Fu Yunzi hurriedly promised. "When your martial uncle recovers, let him go to the Sutras depository. Remember, never give him a chance to leave the sect and go to the celestial sect to see Tian Ruojing." Qing Heng exhorted and turned away. Fu Yunzi's eyes looked back at Qing Feng, who was in a coma on the bed with a very complicated expression. After a long time, he sighed and turned to leave. Not long after Fu Yunzi left, Qing Feng, who was in a coma on the bed, woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, Qing Feng was no longer Qing Feng, but Lin Sun. His identity, memory, and experience were all inherited by Lin Sun. "I didn't expect that I would become an old guy who achieved nothing and a well-known laughingstock." Lin Sun's eyes became strange. Qing Feng, one of the 3 supreme elders of the celestial sect, had been cultivating for 1,000 years. His 2 senior brothers, one was Qing Heng, the other was Qing Geng, both had the cultivation of Zhu Xing ancestor realm. These 2 were also the 2 with the highest cultivation in the celestial sect. Qing Feng's martial nephew was Fu Yunzi, the head of the celestial sect, who had the cultivation of the 8th level of the Emperor realm, Path Fusion realm. Could be said that, in terms of identity, Qing Feng could also be called one of the top 3 in the celestial sect. But his cultivation was only at the level of reincarnation developing realm. This was embarrassing. Not to mention that he was far inferior to his martial nephew. Even most of the disciples in the sect were stronger than him. As a result, Qing Feng's status in the celestial sect became very special. On the surface, everyone in the sect was very respectful to him, the supreme elder, but in secret, many people regarded him as the shame of the sect. In addition, Qing Feng was impatient and did things rashly. He didn't have the demeanor of an elder in the sect at all. Instead, he often did some absurd things that did not match his identity. Over the years, he had caused many jokes. Nowadays, when many disciples of the celestial sect went out, they would feel unspeakably ashamed and humiliated when Qing Feng's name was mentioned. For example, 3 days ago, Qing Feng sneaked out of the sect and went to the celestial spirit sect to find Tian Ruojing. Instead, he was beaten into a coma. This incident was regarded as a joke and spread among many sections. This made the whole celestial sect ashamed and resentful. Even Fu Yunzi felt that he couldn't raise his head. At this time, Lin Sun had inherited Qing Feng's memory and understood his experience, but he had a different feeling in his heart. Qing Feng was not a bad person, and he was not an arrogant and domineering person. On the contrary, most of the jokes he caused were related to his cultivation of reincarnation developing realm. When the supreme elder of a sect only had such a low cultivation, no matter what he did, he would inevitably cause a lot of criticism, and it was easy to be regarded as a joke. For example, the reason why Qing Feng went to the celestial spirit sect 3 days ago was that he fell in love with a woman named Tian Ruojing in the celestial spirit sect 900 years ago. He was so infatuated with her that he couldn't forget her until now. For Qing Feng, he just wanted to see Tian Ruojing, and he didn't want to cause trouble. But now, Tian Ruojing was already in existence at the level of Zhu Xian Emperor Ancestor. She was regarded as the peerless existence who was most likely to embark on the immortal path in the past 1,000 years. Her status in the celestial spirit sect was extremely high. In contrast, although Qing Feng was the supreme elder of the celestial spirit sect, he only had the cultivation of reincarnation developing realm. He and Tian Ruojing were people of 2 different worlds. The most important thing was that Tian Ruojing didn't have any interest in Qing Feng from beginning to end. Even because of Qing Feng's entanglement over the years, she was extremely repulsed and disgusted. Under such circumstances, how could Qing Feng have a chance to see her? Everyone in the Celestial Spirit sect knew Qing Feng's identity and details, so it was impossible for them to give him any face. When Qing Feng tried to break into the gate of the Celestial Spirit sect, it was naturally a tragedy. Chapter 3282. Celestial Spirit sects means were very powerful. When they stopped Qing Feng in front of the gate, they didn't take excessive means. After all, Qing Feng was the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect and the junior fellow apprentice of Emperor Qingheng. Celestial Spirit sect didn't want to offend Celestial Spirit sect because of Qing Feng. At that time, Celestial Spirit sect just casually said that if Qing Feng could defeat a successor of Celestial Spirit sect who was at the same level as him, they would allow him to enter the sect to see Tian Ruojing. Qing Feng agreed without hesitation. Then, Qing Feng was beaten violently. He didn't admit defeat even when he was beaten into a coma. The scene of this battle was imprinted on the jade slips by Celestial Spirit sect. After Qing Feng was sent back to Celestial Spirit sect, the jade slips were also handed over to Fu Yunzi, the headmaster of Celestial Spirit sect. This made Fu Yunzi unable to find a reason to go to Celestial Spirit sect to punish Qing Feng. Because Qing Feng took the initiative to go to Celestial Spirit sect and agreed to fight. Who could he blame? But after knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. He inherited Qing Feng's experience and memory, but unexpectedly found that Qing Feng, who was regarded as a shame by the sect and a joke by the outside world, was actually an extremely simple and kind person. The biggest flaw in him was that he didn't know the ways of the world. If he didn't know the ways of the world, he would inevitably attract criticism when he did things, such as overestimating himself, ungrateful, reckless, and so on. But Qing Feng didn't care about these. His greatest wish was to spend a long time with Tian Ruojing and grow old together. He didn't care about the malice and ridicule of other people in the world. Obviously, the reality was cruel. Qing Feng, who was so simple and stupid, was destined to have a hard time to stand firm in the cruel world of cultivation. It turns out that he is trapped by love. After a long time, when he found the things related to Tian Ruojing from Qing Feng's memory, Lin Sun understood. When a person experiences all sorts of setbacks and tribulations, they would either be unable to recover after a single setback, or they would become braver the more setbacks they faced, and they would temper a heart that had been tempered 100 times and 100 times. But Qing Feng didn't have a tempered Taoist heart, but he didn't collapse. The reason was that Qing Feng's state of mind had been in a state of infatuation since he met Tian Ruojing for 900 years. Because of his infatuation, he did not care about all the slander and ridicule. It was also because of his infatuation that he didn't care about being a laughingstock and being humiliated. Unfortunately, it's a one-sided love. Lin Sun felt funny and emotional at the same time. Immediately, Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious. Qing Feng had been cultivating for 1,000 years. As the Grand Supreme Elder, why was his cultivation stagnant at the reincarnation development realm? If his aptitude was poor, how could he have had the opportunity to enter the celestial sect to cultivate? There was definitely something strange about this. Lin Sun got rid of distracting thoughts and calmed down to feel. Soon, he realized where the problem was. A frightening crack appeared on the foundation of Green Peak's great Tao. It was as if a boulder had been split in half. Under such circumstances, it was no wonder that Qing Feng's cultivation had remained at the reincarnation development realm. If it was any other cultivator, no matter how heaven-defying their talent was, they were bound to be the same as Qing Feng. Who caused such an indelible damage to Green Peak's foundation? Lin Sun sorted out Qing Feng's memory again. After a while, he narrowed his eyes and understood. 900 years ago, Qing Feng already had the cultivation of the reincarnation development realm. At that time, he had only cultivated for 100 years. It was amazing and rare for him to have such cultivation. It was also at that time that Qing Feng met Tian Ruojing and fell in love with her. At that time, Tian Ruojing was only at the Tao Insight realm, but she was extremely beautiful and outstanding and had many followers around her. At that time, Tian Ruojing also had a good impression of Qing Feng, and they went out to travel together. However, when Tian Ruojing was exploring a secret realm, she encountered a deadly calamity. Seeing that her life was in danger, it was Qing Feng who stepped forward bravely and blocked the calamity alone, saving her life. Although the fatal disaster was resolved, Qing Feng was seriously injured. When he recovered, he found that his great Tao foundation had suffered irreparable damage. For any cultivator, this was definitely the cruelest and heaviest blow. But Qing Feng didn't care. What he cared about was that he saved Tian Ruojing and didn't let the woman he loved suffer. At that time, Tian Ruojing was also very moved and said that she would stay with Qing Feng in the future, which naturally made Qing Feng ecstatic. However, shortly after they returned to their respective sects, Tian Ruojing sent a letter and told Qing Feng euphemistically that she was at the critical moment of cultivation and couldn't be with Qing Feng in a short time. Qing Feng understood and had been looking forward to it. He often wrote to Tian Ruojing, expressing his thoughts and feelings in lines of handwriting. At first, Tian Ruojing would reply one by one in a timely manner. But gradually, Qing Feng could only receive a reply every 3 to 5 days. Later, he could only receive a reply every 3 to 5 months. If it were a normal person, he would have long suspected that Tian Ruojing's mind had changed. But Qing Feng was still full of expectations. During this period, Tian Ruojing once wrote a letter to Qing Feng and asked him not to tell others that he saved her in the secret realm. Qing Feng agreed. So until now, his senior brother Qing Heng, martial nephew Fu Yunzi and the others still didn't know that Qing Feng's great Tao foundation was damaged because of saving Tian Ruojing. And it was not difficult to see how much Qing Feng cared about Tian Ruojing. All these years, he suffered so much criticism and humiliation, but he didn't tell anyone about this secret. Year after year passed. Qing Feng, who had been waiting to be with Tian Ruojing, finally couldn't hold back anymore. He began to take the initiative to go to Celestial Spirit sect to look for Tian Ruojing. But every time he waited, the answer was the same: Tian Ruojing was in seclusion. Qing Feng didn't give up and went to inquire about the news every few days. Gradually, even Celestial Spirit sect knew that Qing Feng, the joke guy, was actually trying to be with Tian Ruojing. This also caused a lot of vicious mockery and ridicule. But Qing Feng still didn't care. Gradually, even Celestial Spirit sect began to reject and hate Qing Feng. They didn't expect that Qing Feng would pester them to such an extent. And Celestial Spirit sect also felt ashamed for Qing Feng, the Supreme Elder. More than one person told Qing Feng that he and Tian Ruojing were not from the same world and advised him to give up. This included his senior brother, Qing Heng. He even found many beautiful women for him, trying to make Qing Feng fall in love with someone else. But Qing Feng was still infatuated with her. So far, no one in Celestial Spirit sect persuaded Qing Feng anymore. But Lin soon frowned when he learned about these past events. If Qing Feng's one-sided love was one-sided and he was rejected and hated by Tian Ruojing, then it was understandable. After all, falling flowers yearn for love, but heartless water flows mercilessly. But now it seemed that things were not like this at all. If Qing Feng hadn't risked his life to save her, Tian Ruojing would have been in trouble. The most hateful thing was that if she didn't promise to stay with Qing Feng, maybe Qing Feng wouldn't have waited so bitterly until now. Even if it was a promise, it was easy to regret it. She could just tell Qing Feng directly. Why did she keep delaying and let Qing Feng have a glimmer of hope? It's fine if this woman doesn't fulfill her promise from all those years ago, but Qing Feng saved her life all those years ago after all, yet she doesn't know how to repay his kindness. She just watched as Qing Feng was reduced to shame and a laughingstock because of her. How selfish and indifferent is her disposition. Lin Sun was a little angry. Well, since I borrowed your identity, memory and experience for the time being, I will do you a favor when I leave in the future. Lin Sun took a long breath and collected his thoughts. 3 days later. Celestial Spirit Sect, Scriptures Tower. Qing Feng, who was Lin Sun, sat alone in front of a desk, reading a scroll in his hand. Uncle Master Qing Heng, has said that you are not allowed to leave the sect again. From today onwards, you will stay here. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell those disciples. As long as it's within my capabilities, I will definitely help you. Fu Yunzi whispered on one side. I see. Lin Sun said absent-mindedly. Fu Yunzi looked at the 2 disciples of Scripture's Tower not far away and said, From today on, you must serve the Supreme Elder of Qing Feng well. If there is any neglect, you will not be forgiven. Yes, Headmaster. The 2 disciples hurriedly cupped their hands and accepted the order. Uncle, do you have anything else to tell us? Fu Yunzi looked at Lin Sun again. Nothing, staying here is more leisurely. By the way, tell Brother Qing Heng that I will not go to see Tian Ruojing in the future, so he doesn't have to worry about me anymore. Lin Sun said. In the whole Celestial Spirit Sect, Qing Heng was the best to Qing Feng. The 2 joined the sect together when they were young, and until now, they were like blood brothers. Over the years, even though Qing Feng caused a lot of jokes, Qing Heng had been using his own strength to protect Qing Feng. This was why, although the sect regarded Qing Feng as a shame, they dared not slander and disrespect him openly. Fu Yunzi was stunned and said incredulously, Uncle, is what you said true? God! After being beaten up, did Martial Uncle really have a change of heart? Whether it is true or not, we will know in the future. You should leave quickly. As a headmaster, there are still many things to worry about. You'd better not come to Scripture's Tower in the future. Lin Sun waved his hand. Fu Yunzi uttered and looked at Lin Sun suspiciously, then turned around and left. The 2 of you can leave as well. Lin Sun looked at the 2 disciples of Scripture's Tower, one was called Chun Ning and the other was called Dai Yin. They were a little hesitant. I know you are here to keep an eye on me, worried that I will escape from the sect. But you can stay outside Scripture's Tower. Lin Sun said casually. Chun Ning and Dai Yin looked at each other, then accepted the order and walked out of Scripture's Tower. It is not bad to stay in Scripture's Tower. As long as I keep a low profile, it is enough to make people not notice my abnormality. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. As a favored, as soon as his identity was seen through, then his enemies in this world would definitely come looking for him. After all, he was only in the reincarnation developing realm and was at his weakest. Any random enemy could kill him. P.S. Don't worry, it is a script of cultivating and killing monsters to level up. The process will be quick. Chapter 3283. The territory of the Tao development world was so huge that it could be compared to a heaven in the eternal true world. Since ancient times, there had been 4 great orthodoxies in this world. They were the Celestial Pavilion, the Celestial Court, the Demon Sect, and the Demon Sect. Within the 4 orthodoxies, there were many undying beings. Under the 4 orthodoxies, there were 12 first-rate cultivation forces. Among these forces, there were also undying beings in charge, but their foundations were far from the 4 orthodoxies. Further down were countless second-rate and third-rate powers, and they were distributed in different territories of the Tao development world. These powers basically didn't have any undying overseeing them. For example, the Celestial Sect was a second-rate power that was situated in the eastern territory of the Tao evolution world, and there were over 100 similar second-rate powers in this territory. There was only one first-rate force, the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect. The Scarlet Serpent Celestial Sect was a subordinate of one of the 4 great orthodoxies, the Celestial Pavilion. Knowing these news, Lin Sun felt more relieved. After all, the Celestial Sect was considered a second-rate sect. If he were to hide within the sect, it would be impossible for his enemies to find him in a short period of time. If they were to appear in a first-rate faction or one of the four great orthodoxies upon entering this world, the risk would be too great. For Lin, the top priority was to cultivate as soon as possible. If I want to use Qingfeng's foundation, soul, and body to develop a great Tao that leads straight to eternity, I must first comprehend the power of the heavenly Tao that belongs to this world. But if I'm only at the reincarnation development stage, I can at most sense the Tao runes and Tao will in the heavenly cycle Tao laws. I can forget about prying into the essence of the laws of this world. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The lower 5 realms were limited by their cultivation. They could only sense the Tao runes and Tao intents that belonged to the heavenly cycle Tao laws. The Tao path of longevity, the Tao path of sage, the Tao path of emperors, and the Tao path of immortality could only sense the mysteries of the great Taos that corresponded to one's cultivation level. As such, one could imagine, it was almost impossible to peek into the mysteries of the rules of this world in the reincarnation development state. Then I'll first resolve the cracks in the foundation of the great Tao and increase my cultivation. Lin Sun made a decision. Although he had become Qing Feng, his wisdom and cultivation experience were still there. To others, the foundation of Azure Peak's Grand Tao was already impossible to repair. But to him, there were thousands of ways to solve this problem. Time passed day by day. To everyone in the celestial sect, life was the same as before. Very few people would pay attention to Grand Elder Qing Feng's movements. Who would care about such a disgrace of the sect? To most people in celestial sect, it was a blessing that he didn't have to go out and embarrass himself. Headmaster Fu Yunzi was still a little worried at first, but as time passed, he found that Qing Feng had been staying in the scripture pavilion, so he finally relaxed. As the sect master, it was impossible for him to place all his attention on Qing Feng. Especially after Qing Feng became well-behaved, he had practically lost his sense of existence. Even the disciples who frequently entered the scripture pavilion to read books turned a blind eye to Qing Feng. It wasn't because they disdained him, but because they were ashamed to be associated with him. How could Lin Sun care about this? He wished that everyone would stop paying attention to him. A month passed quickly. Lin Sun sat in the Sutras pavilion drinking tea and reading books every day. When dusk fell, he would return to his residence to meditate. Day after day. No one knew that in the past 6 months, he had already solved the big injury on his foundation. Using a secret technique, he completely overturned the cultivation of the lower 5 realms of the Green Peak and recultivated them, allowing each realm to reach an unprecedented level. However, for fear of being seen through by others, Lin Sun had been concealing all his changes with a secret method. In the eyes of outsiders, he was still the disgrace of the sect, and they were ashamed to be associated with him. During this period, Qing Heng also came to the scripture pavilion, ostensibly to consult an ancient book, but in fact, he came to see Qing Feng. Seeing that Qing Feng had been staying here obediently, Qing Heng was relieved. He left some elixirs he had refined, saying that they were good for repairing the foundation of Tao. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing that Qing Feng had a good senior brother. Taking this opportunity, Lin Sun asked Qing Heng for instructions, hoping to go to Tianluo Cave, the forbidden area of the sect to cultivate for a period of time. This made Qing Heng surprised and happy, and he agreed without hesitation. It's naturally a good thing that junior brother is able to put his mind on cultivation. After half a year of cultivation in Tianluo Cave, Lin Sun reached the 9th level of longevity tribulation in one fell swoop. At this point, Tianluo Cave could no longer satisfy Lin Sun's cultivation. He immediately left and decided to go to Qing Heng. After all, he was Qing Feng now. He had been infatuated with Tian Ruojing for 900 years. It was obviously unreasonable for him not to go to Tian Ruojing all of a sudden. If someone investigated it, it would definitely arouse a lot of suspicion. Junior brother, what can I do for you? In a cave residence, Qing Heng looked at Lin Sun, who came to his door, and asked, Senior brother, the elixirs you gave me before are really effective. My foundation of Tao has been repaired a lot. It won't take long for me to recover. Lin Sun showed a look of joy. He had to pretend for a while. Really? Qing Heng couldn't help getting excited. Lin Sun nodded with a smile, and then hesitated. Senior brother, I want to go to Celestial Spirit Sect. Suddenly, Qing Heng's heart sank with excitement. He frowned and said, It's only been 2 months. Junior brother, you can't help but want to see that woman again? His tone was full of exasperation. Lin Sun could feel the change of Qing Heng's mood, but he had to continue pretending. He said in a low voice, Senior brother, I think if my foundation can be repaired, I can improve my cultivation step by step in the future. Sooner or later, I can catch up with Ruojing's pace, so, Qing Heng's face was gloomy. He scolded, You can see her if you want. When you become an emperor, I will take you to Celestial Spirit Sect to see her. Before that, don't even think about leaving Celestial Spirit Sect. His attitude was firm. Lin Sun looked helpless, but he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing this scene, he had probably judged that Qing Heng had not suspected his identity so far. Junior brother, in my opinion, Tian Ruojing is the devil in your heart on the road of cultivation. If you don't get rid of the devil in your heart, it will be difficult for you to make great achievements on the road of cultivation in this life. Qing Heng said in a light voice, Yet now, since there's hope for your foundation in the Grand Tao to recover, the more I can't allow you to persist in going about things the wrong way. From today onwards, I'll personally pass down my experiences in cultivation to you every 3 months. Seeing this, Lin Sun hurriedly interrupted. No, senior brother, your time is so precious. How can you waste it on me? I will listen to you and stay in Celestial Spirit Sect. After saying this, he left quickly. Qing Heng saw this. He couldn't help but sigh with a headache and helplessness. His junior brother was so talented in those days, but now he became like this. It was completely ruined by Tian Ruojing. I will find a chance to teach that woman a lesson in the future. Qing Heng secretly gritted his teeth. After leaving Qing Heng's residence, Lin Sun went straight back to the Sutras Pavilion. Although Qing Heng doesn't doubt me now, there are so many eyes in Celestial Spirit Sect. I have to make them not suspect me. Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly shook his head and sighed. Granduncle, why do you sigh? Chun Ning, a disciple who had been stationed in the Sutras Pavilion, couldn't help asking. You don't understand. Lin Sun sighed. Dai Yen, a disciple on the side, couldn't help saying, Granduncle, don't tell me you want to go to Celestial Spirit Sect again? Lin Sun was silent for a while and said helplessly, I can't go. Just now, senior brother Qing Heng has ordered that I am not allowed to go out. Chun Ning and Dai Yen looked at each other and were speechless. It had only been 2 months of peace, and Granduncle's old habits were obviously acting up again. On the same day, the two spread the news, which made Fu Yunzi's cheeks twitch. He thought that Granduncle had been enlightened, but he didn't expect that old habits were still hard to change. When other people in Celestial Spirit Sect learned about this, they didn't find it strange at all. On the contrary, they thought that this was the Qing Feng they knew. No one knew that Lin Sun also took great pains to put on this show in order not to arouse any suspicion. A few days later, Lin Sun, who was drinking tea and reading in the Sutras Pavilion, inadvertently learned a piece of news from the discussion of some disciples. A month ago, the 4 major orthodoxies, Immortal Pavilion, Divine Court, Demon Sect, and Demon Sect, issued an order to arrest all favored who had recently entered the Tao world. Whoever could provide information would receive generous rewards from the 4 orthodoxies. At the same time, the 12 top forces under the 4 orthodoxies all dispatched their forces to cooperate with the 4 orthodoxies to patrol the world and search for traces of favored. As soon as news like this spread, the entire world was shocked, and the world was in an uproar. The entire Tao development world fell into turmoil. And according to the news Lin soon received, in the Eastern Territory where Celestial Spirit Sect was located, the only Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect had also taken action. They had sent 10 Ju Xie Emperor ancestors to patrol the major forces in the Eastern Territory. And it wouldn't be long before these 10 Ju Xie Emperor ancestors arrived at Celestial Spirit Sect to investigate. This made Lin Sun's heart tremble. He didn't even need to think to know that this storm was coming for him. When it came to Favored, all the major powers of the evolution Tao world knew about them. They knew that Favored didn't belong to their world. For example, in the 4 orthodoxies there were already more than 10 Favored that were known to the world. Every one of them was a giant figure on the immortal path. Many of them had the cultivation of transcendent realm. And people like Qing Feng also knew that among the favored of the 4 Tao courts, there were 7 of the strongest. They were the mandate envoys from the Zhen division of the Tai Chu sect. The leader was called Zhu Qing, the first person on the immortal path. This made Lin Sun, who had inherited Qing Feng's memories, naturally know that this storm targeting him was the work of Zhu Qing and the other 6 mandate envoys. Fortunately, I made some remedial measures a few days ago and didn't arouse any suspicion. In this case, even if the 10 Ju Xie Emperor ancestors from the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect come, they shouldn't be able to find anything, Lin Sun thought. Chapter 3284. On the 3rd day after Lin Sun got the news, the 10 Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect came together, and the Supreme Elder Qing Heng and Qing Gung went to greet them in person. An hour later, all the disciples in the lower 5 realms of Celestial Sect were summoned to the hall of the sect to be questioned by the Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect. Even Chunning and Dai Yen, who were stationed outside the Sutras Pavilion, were summoned. Lin Sun couldn't help but be vigilant. But to his surprise, he was not summoned. Chunning and Dai Yen returned at noon and told Lin that the 10 Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect had left. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "I'm also in the reincarnation developing realm. Why didn't they summon me?" Chun Ning had a strange expression as she said embarrassedly, "Martial Granduncle, what kind of status do you have? How can you possibly be someone they can meet just because they want to?" Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "Who are you trying to fool? Just tell them the truth." Chun Ning hesitated for a while before saying in a low voice, "Before they came, they had already heard many things about you, Martial Granduncle. After arriving at the sect, they verified it with Martial Granduncle Qing Heng, and then decided not to see you. It must be more than that. Go on." Lin Sun frowned. Chunning finally told the truth. "Those masters of Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect said that you were pitiful enough and they couldn't bear to embarrass you in public." Dai Yen, who was at the side, also hurriedly said, "Senior Granduncle, you are the supreme elder of our celestial sect. How can you be interrogated like the others in the lower 5 levels? If they do that, Senior Granduncle Qing Heng will definitely be the first to object." Lin Sun laughed and said, "In the final analysis, they are looking down on me." He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. "Looking down on me?" Of course, it was great. Chunning and Dai Yin cursed in their hearts. "Now you know they are looking down on you. All right, you can leave." Lin Sun waved his hand. This invisible crisis was resolved, but Lin Sun became more vigilant. He knew very well that the enemy would not give up until they caught him. "I must improve my cultivation as soon as possible." Lin Sun felt a sense of urgency. A few days later, Lin Sun went to find Qing Heng and said, "Senior brother, I want to travel outside for a while." "Travel?" Qing Heng was suspicious. "Yes, I'm extremely bored, so I want to go out and relax," Lin Sun said. Qing Heng said, "Are you planning to take a roundabout route to find Tianruojing?" Lin smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother, how about letting Dai Yen and Chunning follow me? If I go to the Heavenly Spirit Sect, Ask them to inform you immediately, okay? Qing Hing pondered for a moment and said, Fine, as long as you don't go to Celestial Spirit Sect to look for that girl, I will allow you to go out. As he spoke, he took out a jade talisman from his arms and handed it to Lin Sun. He said gently, Take this jade talisman with you. There is an image of my will in it. If you are in danger, just crush it. Lin Sun took it and said with a smile, Thank you for your help. He felt more and more in his heart how fortunate it was for the Azure Peak to have such a senior brother. On that day, he left the sect with Chun Ning and Dai Yin. However, in the 10 days since he left Celestial Spirit Sect, Lin Sun had always felt that someone was following him in secret. It was not until he was sure that there was no sign of him going to Celestial Spirit Sect did the person secretly follow him. He left quietly. Lin Sun didn't need to guess to know that it was Qing Hung. In an inn. It was late at night. Chunning and Dai Yin were meditating in their rooms. However, all of them completely didn't notice that in the neighboring room, 5 Grand Dao clones had suddenly surged out from the body of their martial ancestral uncle, Qing Feng, that they'd always been watching over. Then, the 5 clones turned into shadows of light and silently left the tavern. From today onwards, the 5 great Taoist bodies would cultivate in the wilderness and deep within the mountains. They would study the great Taos of the universe and deduce their future path towards the Tao with their strength. With Lin Sun's wisdom and cultivation experience at the level of boundless realm, it would be as easy as turning over his hand to recultivate his past cultivation path with the 5 Tao forms. His speed of breaking through the realm would be several times faster than comprehending by himself. In the final analysis, due to the limitation of cultivation, Lin Sun could only cultivate with the help of the 5 Tao forms in order to improve his cultivation as quickly as possible. Moreover, the 5 Tao forms didn't have to worry about being stared at by many people when they cultivated outside. Even if they broke through the realm repeatedly, they didn't have to worry about causing any disturbance. But it was different in Celestial Spirit Sect, where there were too many eyes. A little carelessness was very likely to leave traces. Even if my original body doesn't do anything, when the 5 Tao forms return one day, my cultivation will also break through to the same realm. In the room of the inn, Lin Sun stretched his body and felt relaxed all over. The next morning, he decided to return to Celestial Spirit Sect. This made Chun Ning and Dai Yin very surprised. He was going back after just half a month of traveling outside? Lin Sun didn't care what they thought. He had achieved his purpose of going out this time. How could he still have the mood to wander around? On the way to Celestial Spirit Sect, they met a group of descendants of Celestial Spirit Sect, all of whom were in the reincarnation developing realm. When they saw Lin Sun, these descendants of Celestial Spirit Sect burst into laughter. Senior Brother Wei, isn't this the shameless old man who was beaten up by you? Shameless old man? He is the Supreme Elder of Celestial Spirit Sect and the junior brother of Emperor Qing Hung. But his cultivation is a bit too poor. Such a guy still wants our Supreme Third Elder. It's like a toad lusting after swan meat. Suddenly, all kinds of sarcasm and ridicule were directed at Lin Sun unceremoniously. In Qingfeng's memory, he had experienced such scenes too many times. If it were Qingfeng himself, he would certainly not care. If it were Lin Sun, although he frowned slightly, he could only imitate Qingfeng's method and make himself ignore it. Lin Sun was also very helpless. If he couldn't keep his cool, he wouldn't be the Qingfeng everyone was familiar with. However, this time he saw the descendant of Celestial Spirit Sect who had beaten Qingfeng into a coma. This person, dressed in snow-white clothes, had an imposing appearance and a youthful arrogance. His name was Wei Xian. Aren't you going too far? Lin Sun could still bear the ridicule, but Chunning and Dai Yin couldn't. They looked ashamed and angry. In their hearts, no matter how unbearable Qingfeng was, he was still the Supreme Elder of Celestial Spirit Sect. How could they feel good being ridiculed by some reincarnation developing realm cultivators of celestial spirit sect? Going too far? We're just telling the truth. If you're not convinced, why don't we play? Wei Xian's eyes were full of disdain as he glanced at Chunning and Dai Yin. Why not? Chunning was also angry. She was about to step forward to fight but was stopped by Lin Sun. Forget it. Don't bother with them. Let's go back to the sect first. Senior Granduncle Yu Chun Ning was very angry, and also very disappointed in her heart. Martial Granduncle, oh Martial Granduncle, I am standing up for you, Can't you appear a little more unyielding? Even if you're beaten, I'll bear it. Dai Yin also sighed and said, Chunning, listen to Senior Granduncle. Let's go. Chunning was silent for a moment and nodded with a gloomy face. Lin Sun didn't say anything more and left with them. Wei Xian and the others didn't stop them, but their words were unforgiving. They not only ridiculed and humiliated Lin Sun, but also Chunning. When Chunning left, his fists were clenched so tightly that blue veins were bulging. It was clear how angry he was. After returning to Celestial Spirit Sect, Chunning didn't say a word. When facing Lin Sun, his attitude also changed. Although he was still respectful, there was a sense of alienation. It was the same for Dai Yin. Both of them were very unhappy and disappointed. Seeing all this, Lin Sun began to appreciate the two young people. Under such circumstances, they still dared to stand up for him, the shame of the sect. This kind of temperament was very rare. After thinking about it, he went straight to find Headmaster Fu Yunzi and told him what happened on the way. Fu Yunzi's face was also gloomy. He immediately said in surprise, Senior Granduncle, you didn't care about these things in the past. How come this time? Lin Sun said, It doesn't matter if I'm looked down on, but I can't let the future generations of the sect suffer grievances with me. Fu Yunzi immediately understood and said solemnly, Senior Granduncle, I will appease them well. He also knew that this senior granduncle of his was not a bad person. In fact, he was extremely benevolent. It was just that his temperament was too simple and simple-minded. Sure enough, the next day, Chunning and Dai Yan's attitude towards Lin Sun had changed a lot. Yesterday, the headmaster had talked to them and knew that Lin Sun had taken the initiative to talk about their affairs. For this, the headmaster also rewarded them with a lot of cultivation resources. Senior Granduncle, we're not angry with you. We're just angry that they don't put our celestial spirit sect in their eyes. It's really hateful, Chunning said in a low voice. Yes, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely go and wrestle with them, Dai Yin also said. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say much. Time flew by like an arrow. 1 year after Lin Sun appeared in the Tao development world. The 5 Tao bodies have been cultivating for half a year. I wonder to what extent their cultivation has improved. In the Sutras Pavilion, Lin Sun flipped through the scrolls while his mind wandered. Senior Granduncle, bad news. Senior Granduncle Qing Heng returned injured. Suddenly, Chunning's anxious voice sounded outside the Sutras Pavilion. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. He put away the scroll in his hand and stood up, saying, Didn't Senior Brother go to participate in the 100 Sect Dharma Conference? Why did he come back injured? A month ago, the Red Serpent Immortal Sect held the 100 Sect Dharma Conference and invited hundreds of second-rate and third-rate sects in the Eastern Territory to participate. As the representative of Celestial Spirit Sect, Qing Heng also went to participate. But the ancestor sent a message saying that Qing Heng was injured, which surprised Lin Sun. In the whole Celestial Spirit Sect, Qing Heng took care of Qing Feng the most and regarded him as a brother. If something happened to Qing Heng, Lin Sun would feel sorry. Chunning shook her head and said, I don't know. Why don't you go and see Senior Granduncle? Lin Sun nodded and went straight to Qing Feng. Chapter 3285. The Sect Hall. The Supreme Elder Qing Geng, the Sect Master Fu Yunzi, and all the elders were gathered here, and all of them had extremely gloomy expressions. Not far away, Qing Hing sat cross-legged with a pale face and a dispirited aura. "Everyone, it's just a minor injury. There's no need to be so worried." Qing Hing smiled and shook his head. However, he coughed violently as soon as he finished speaking, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "You call this a minor injury? You even injured your foundation." Qing Gong gritted his teeth and said, "Tian Ruojing was too ruthless. We can't let this enmity go." Qing Hing waved his hand and said, "Don't say such angry words. During the 100 Sect Conference, I fought her fairly. I can't blame anyone for my loss." He paused for a moment and said sadly, "Not to mention that an eternal figure of the Celestial Pavilion has taken a fancy to Tian Ruojing, and she'll be selected to be an elder of the Celestial Pavilion 10 years from now. With her current identity, even the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect has to be courteous to her. We can't be enemies with her." As he finished speaking, his voice revealed dense bitterness. Everyone's expressions changed indeterminately when they heard this, and they fell silent. One of the 4 great sects, the Celestial Pavilion, had sent an eternal figure to participate in the 100 Sect Conference. In the end, that eternal figure took a fancy to 10 imperial ancestors, and he promised to select these 10 imperial ancestors to be elders of the Celestial Pavilion 10 years from now. They would be stationed in the secret realm of the Celestial Pavilion to cultivate. One of these 10 people was the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Spirit Sect, Tian Ruojing. Everyone knew that Tian Ruojing's identity was completely different from now onward, and she could be said to have ascended to the heavens in a single step. After all, the Celestial Pavilion was one of the 4 great sects of the Tao development world, and even the 12 first-rate powers in the world had no choice but to bow their heads to it. It was absolutely an extraordinary power that ruled over this world. Before a colossus like the Celestial Pavilion, second-rate powers like the Celestial Sect and the Celestial Spirit Sect were nothing. 10 years from now, Tian Ruojing would become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion, and her identity was so high that it could even make a first-rate power like the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect lower its head. Under such circumstances, if the Celestial Sect viewed Tian Ruojing as their enemy, the Celestial Pavilion wouldn't even need to do anything. The Scarlet Serpent Celestial Sect would be the first to move and destroy the Celestial Sect. Everyone in the hall was clearly aware of this as well, but they couldn't help but feel gloomy and oppressed in their hearts, and they felt resentment that had nowhere to vent. At this moment, a figure walked into the hall. It was Lin Sun. When the crowd saw him appear, their expressions became even more unsightly, and they were filled with anger. "Qing Feng, you've caused senior brother Qing Heng to suffer." Qing Gong couldn't help but shout angrily, venting his pent-up anger on Lin Sun. It was the first time for Lin Sun to meet Qing Gong, but he knew that Qing Feng was extremely in awe of him. The reason was that Qing Gong's temperament was unyielding and overbearing. He had always looked down on him, the shame of the sect, and he had reprimanded and scolded Qing Feng many times. "I was the one who harmed senior brother Qing Heng?" Lin Sun frowned and glanced around. His heart sank when he saw everyone's gloomy expression. He realized that Qing Heng's injury might be extremely serious this time. If you hadn't pestered Tian Ruojing all these years, how could senior brother Qing Heng have a duel with Tian Ruojing in the Assembly of 100 Sects? Qing Gong said angrily. Headmaster Fu Yunzi and the other elders also had ugly expressions on their faces. "Qing Gong, how can you blame junior brother for this? He didn't know anything about it." Qing Heng, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, sighed, "You all leave. I want to talk to junior brother Qing Feng alone." "At this time, you still want to protect him? You know, Tian Ruojing has been recognized by the Immortal Pavilion. If you don't teach Qing Feng a lesson and he goes to the Immortal Pavilion to pester Tian Ruojing in the future, how much trouble will he cause? At that time, can you still protect him, senior brother?" Qing Gong's face was livid. "Leave. Qing Heng looked up at Qing Geng. Qing Geng's face was gloomy for a while. Finally, he swung his sleeves and left angrily. Before leaving, he gave Lin Sun a fierce look, full of contempt and coldness. Fu Yunzi and other elders also left when they saw this. Soon, only Qing Heng and Lin Sun were left in the sect hall. Senior brother, did Tian Ruojing hurt you? Lin Sun stepped forward and saw at a glance that Qing Heng was in a bad state. There were faint signs of disorder in his qi. If he guessed right, Qing Heng was not only seriously injured, but also hurt the foundation of Tao. This caused him to feel rather upset in his heart. With Qing Feng's memory, he knew that Qing Heng was the only one who treated him sincerely in Celestial Sect. Even if Qing Feng had done a lot of ridiculous things over the years, Qing Heng had always used his own strength to protect his junior brother. At this time, seeing that Qing Heng was so seriously injured, and it was very likely to be related to Tian Ruojing, Lin Sun couldn't help but be angry. Was it not enough for this woman to hurt Qing Feng? Was she going to destroy Qing Heng? It's indeed related to her. Qing Heng motioned Lin Sun to sit down and then smiled bitterly. I was going to take the opportunity of 100 Sect Dharma Conference to teach Tian Ruojing a lesson, but I didn't expect that I would be taught a lesson by her instead. Lin Sun's mood was complicated. Sure enough, Qing Heng wanted to avenge his junior brother, Qing Feng, and was injured because of this. When people in the world regarded Qing Feng as a joke, Qing Heng, the supreme elder of Celestial Sect, wanted to avenge his junior brother, which made Lin Sun sigh with emotion in his heart. What a good senior brother! Hey, let's not talk about this. We haven't had a good chat for a long time. Let's have a good chat today. With that, Qing Heng took out a pot of wine and drank it heartily. Then he said, Junior brother, I still remember the scene when we entered Celestial Sect when we were young. At that time, 9 of us were selected as disciples, but because of my poor background, I was often excluded and isolated. Only you treated me as a friend and never cared how humble my background was. His eyes were full of reminiscence, and he looked absent-minded. You don't know that I looked proud and conceited at that time, but in fact I was extremely self-abased. I always felt that I was inferior to others in every aspect and often felt sorry for myself. I remember once I was bullied by senior brother Chong. He stepped on my face with his foot and laughed at me, who was born in a poor family. Even if I had the opportunity to cultivate, I was doomed to be trampled by him for the rest of my life. Speaking of this, Qing Heng looked up at Lin Sun. Do you know, I was so ashamed and resentful at that time that I even had the idea of committing suicide. Then, you appeared and fought with senior brother Chong like a fool. You didn't even take a step back when you were beaten to the point of vomiting blood. You kept standing in front of me, and the blood that flowed out of your mouth was all over my face. I can still remember that bloody smell. Qing Heng took a deep breath and drank another mouthful of wine, saying, It was also that day that I swore to protect you for the rest of my life, even at the cost of my life. Speaking of this, he smiled bitterly, but I didn't expect that you would be delayed by Tian Ruojing. Even if I wanted to help you, I couldn't do anything. Lin Sun listened silently, and the memory of Qing Feng's youth emerged in his mind. His mood also fluctuated. After a while, he said, Senior brother, you have helped me too much. I will remember it all in my heart. As for Tian Ruojing, I will deal with her myself in the future. Qing Heng suddenly said coldly, Junior brother, tell me the truth. Was your Grand Tao Foundation that suffered a heavy injury all those years ago because of Tian Ruojing? Lin Sun was stunned and said, Senior brother, it's all in the past. Qing Heng's expression was complicated. Sure enough, I knew it. You were in the reincarnation developing realm and Tian Ruojing was only in the Tao insight realm. When you explored the secret realm together, it was your foundation of Tao that was hurt. How could there be nothing strange about it? As he spoke, he drank another mouthful of wine and said in a self-deprecating manner, This is great. Both of us have injured our great Tao foundations. It's all related to Tian Ruojing. We can be considered to be going through thick and thin together. That laughter was filled with indescribable melancholy and bitterness. Senior brother, don't be so discouraged. In my opinion, you will definitely be able to recover your Tao injuries in the future and go further on the path of Tao. Lin Sun comforted him softly. Qing Heng couldn't help but laugh. How could sovereign ancestor Juexian's Tao injury be so easily healed? Don't worry about me. Lin Sun thought for a while and asked, Senior brother, what's the purpose of this 100 sects Dharma conference? In Qingfeng's memories, there was no information related to this 100 sect assembly. Qing Heng said casually, the first reason is because the Immortal Pavilion wants to select some powerful figures who have hopes of becoming immortal. The second reason is related to the hunt for favored. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes imperceptibly. Favored, Qing Heng sighed lightly. Since ancient times until now, there have been numerous favored that have appeared in our Tao development world. At the beginning, all of them were extremely weak, but along with the passage of time, their cultivations were able to transform by leaps and bounds, and most of them were able to attain the eternal Tao and transcendence realm. Every single one of them was like a supreme legend. After pausing for a while, he continued, just like this time, the first immortal of the Immortal Pavilion, Zhu Qing, along with 6 other Heaven's Mandate envoys, gave an order to kill a favored called Lin Sun. During this 100 sect assembly, the Immortal of the Immortal Pavilion gave a tough order. He said that if any sect dared to not report it, they would be exterminated if they were found out. Knowing this, Lin Sun sneered in his heart. The more they threatened, the more it proved that the Heaven's Mandate envoys had yet to find any clues related to him. After chatting for a while, Lin Sun saw that Qing Heng's face was filled with exhaustion, so he immediately bid farewell and left. Returning to his residence, Lin Sun lay on the rocking chair alone. Recalling the scenes of his conversation with Qing Heng, a cold expression gradually appeared in his eyes. Tian Ruojing? Heaven's Mandate envoys? Heaven's Mandate envoys? In my eyes, what is she? Since a good karma has been formed, I will naturally repay it. If it leads to bad karma, I will eliminate it. The news of Qing Heng's injuries shook the entire celestial sect. Anger was fermenting in everyone's heart. On that day, Headmaster Fu Yunzi ordered that no one was allowed to go to the celestial sect to provoke them. Once discovered, they would be expelled from the sect. This made all the disciples of the celestial sect feel very sullen. Who didn't know that the sect was planning to keep the peace and endure silently? Chapter 3286. The entire celestial sect, who had nowhere to vent their anger, started to dislike Qing Feng even more. Many people even thought that he was the culprit who caused great elder Qing Heng to be injured. In secret, voices of criticism resounded out, and most of them were directed at Supreme Elder Qing Feng. Lin Sun ignored it and didn't care about it. At present, he must keep a low profile and accumulate his cultivation. What Celestial Sect didn't expect was that on the 3rd day after Qing Heng came back injured, Tian Ruojing, the highest elder of Celestial Sect, came to visit alone. At the 100 Sect assembly, it was Tian Ruojing who seriously injured Qing Heng, which aroused the anger of Celestial Sect. But now, she came to Celestial Sect. What was she going to do? Swagger? Or was he going to take further revenge? In any case, Tian Ruojing's current status was completely different from before. Even if he resisted and rejected her in his heart, Fu Yunzi still came in person. But when he learned the purpose of Tian Ruojing's visit, he was surprised. She came to find Qing Feng, the highest elder, Sutra's pavilion. When he learned that Tian Ruojing was waiting for him in the reception hall of Celestial Sect, Lin Sun couldn't help raising his eyebrows. What was this woman doing here? After thinking about it, Lin Sun got up and went straight to her. He wanted to see what this woman, who almost destroyed Qing Feng, came for. Reception hall. Tian Ruojing sat there alone in a snow-white dress. Her black hair was like a waterfall. Her facial features were delicate, her skin was smooth, and under her black eyebrows was a pair of eyes as bright as stars. At this moment, sitting there casually, she was like a fairy descending to the mortal world, with a transcendent aura. When Lin Sun came to the hall and saw this woman for the first time, he inexplicably felt a sour and excited emotion in his heart, which made his eyes become strange. This was the instinctive emotion of Qing Feng. But only for a moment, Lin Sun suppressed it and walked into the hall. Tian Ruojing's eyes fell on him at the first time, full of indifference, without a trace of emotion on her face. It was as if a superior was indifferently looking at an ant on the ground. "What are you looking for me for?" Sitting in the chair, Lin Sun looked at Tian Ruojing opposite him. Looking at the looming arrogance between her eyebrows, he couldn't help but feel amused. A long time ago, when he was still in the eternal true world, forget those Zhu Shui Emperor's ancestors, even the immortals had to lower their heads when they saw him. After experiencing the battles in the Sea of Destiny and entering the ruins of myriad Dao, the boundless Dao lords on the eternal Dao path could only bow before him. Now, a mere peerless martial monarch ancestor was putting on airs in front of him. How ridiculous was that? Tian Ruojing was slightly stunned and seemed to be slightly surprised that the Green Summit would speak to her like this. She said, "Is it because I injured the foundation of your senior brother's Grand Dao that you've started to become hostile towards me?" Lin Sun said, "You're not planning to be my Taoist companion, are you?" A wisp of coldness suffused the depths of Tian Ruojing's eyes as she said, "Become Dao companions? Only you, Qing Feng, would be so ignorant and laughable in this world. All those years ago, since the moment your foundation in the Grand Dao was heavily injured, you and I weren't people of the same world since long ago. But what about you? You didn't recognize reality clearly, and you've always bitterly pestered me during these past few years, causing countless joke. I'm very curious about it. Don't you feel ashamed?" Lin Sun frowned. But before he could speak, Tian Ruojing's eyes were filled with sarcasm. She said, "The bright moon in the sky will not associate with the dust on the ground. This is a well-known fact, but only you refuse to accept this reality. Look at what you've done over the years, and then look at your reputation in the cultivation world. How sad it is." For some unknown reason, the calmer Qing Feng appeared. The more indescribable rage surged in Tian Ruojing's heart. But to her surprise, even if he was so sarcastic, there was no sign of Qing Feng being irritated. He was as calm as ever. "Sure enough, just like those people said, you don't care about your reputation at all. You have no sense of shame in your heart. I really don't know what's the point of a waste like you living in this world." Tian Ruojing said coldly. "Are you done?" Lin Sun asked. His indifferent attitude made Tian Ruojing feel suffocated. At the same time, she faintly felt strange. After so many years, wasn't this guy infatuated with her? Why was he so calm now? "I also have a lot of things to ask you," Lin Sun said. Hearing this, Tian Ruojing's expression became cold. She seemed to have guessed what he was going to ask and said, "If you want to say that I promised to marry you, I advise you not to ask about it. You'll only humiliate yourself if you ask." Lin Sun said, "I just want to know that even if you don't want to marry me, why don't you give me a clear answer? Why do you always let me have a glimmer of hope and wait for you until now?" Tian Ruojing seemed to feel very funny and said, "Qing Feng, if you are an ordinary person, who will be so stupid as you? Don't you understand that the reason why I don't see you is that I refuse you?" Lin Sun shook his head. "No, you are worried." "What am I worried about?" Tian Ruojing was stunned. Lin Sun looked into her eyes and said, "You are worried that I will tell others that I saved your life in the secret realm, and that you promised to marry me. If this is known, it will be a great blow to your reputation. After all, I suffered a Taoist injury because I saved you." Tian Ruojing's pupils shrank. Lin Sun continued, So, you don't dare to cut off the relationship with me immediately. You should drag it on as long as you can. As time goes on, when I tell others what happened in those years, people will only think that I was angry and slandered you. After all, I am a laughingstock in people's eyes, and you, Tian Ruojing, have long been the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect. Who will believe what I said? Tian Ruojing stared at Lin Sun for a moment. She seemed to be very surprised and said, "It seems that you are not stupid. Why did you do such stupid things in these years?" Lin Sun said, "What you think is stupid is my infatuation and waiting from the bottom of my heart. But now I have seen through it." A touch of sarcasm appeared on Tian Ruojing's beautiful face. "So what? Can you still take revenge on me in your current situation? As I said before, even if you come to your senses, you are still a good-for-nothing and can hardly make any progress in the reincarnation developing realm in this life. But I am different. In 10 years, I will enter Immortal Pavilion to prepare for the immortality. If that time comes, you and I are doomed to have no more intersection." Her voice was cold and indifferent, and she did not hide her contempt for Qing Feng. Lin Sun glanced at her and said, "Let's get down to business." Tian Ruojing said, "Well, since you have clearly realized that you are unbearable, I might as well speak frankly. From now on, if I know any rumors that are unfavorable to my reputation, Celestial Spirit Sect will no longer exist. I believe you should know how serious the consequences are." Lin Sun asked, "Since you are so worried, why don't you kill me?" Tian Ruojing glanced at him coldly and said, "You saved my life. How can I kill you? I won't let you die. I want you to see how I set foot on the path to immortality step by step and stand at the top of the Tao development realm." Lin Sun laughed and pointed to his chest. "It turns out that the matter of me saving your life has become a knot in your heart. In this way, you have been like a devil in my heart all these years, and I have been like a hindrance in your heart." Looking at Qing Feng's calm smile, Tian Ruojing's heart was inexplicably filled with killing intent. But in the end, she still held it back. "Qing Feng, I have finished what I have to say. You should know that it is not difficult for me to destroy Celestial Spirit Sect after seeing what happened to your senior brother Qing Heng." After saying that, Tian Ruojing turned and left. Watching her leave, Lin Sun also got up and planned to return to his residence. But before he walked out of the hall, he was stopped by Fu Yunzi. "Martial uncle, why did she come here?" Fu Yunzi looked nervous. Lin Sun said, "She advised me to give up completely and not to have any designs on her." Fu Yunzi was stunned. "That's all?" Lin Sun said with a smile, "She is such a noble person. How can she marry me, the shame of the sect?" Fu Yunzi was speechless for a while. After hesitating for a while, he said in a low voice, "Uncle Master, Tian Ruojing is indeed completely different from before. In 10 years, she will become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion. You must not be so stubborn." Lin Sun said, "Don't worry, I won't." After saying that, he also turned around and left. Fu Yunzi couldn't help feeling puzzled. He always felt that today's martial uncle seemed to be a little different. Could it be that martial uncle really let go of the obsession in his heart? If so, it is also a happy thing. Fu Yunzi murmured in his heart. Today's Tian Ruojing was no longer someone their Celestial Spirit Sect could offend. Even if Qing Heng was hurt by her, they could only endure it. This was the reality. Celestial Spirit Sect. After returning to her cave residence, Tian Ruojing's state of mind had been unable to calm down. How could Qing Feng see through the karma in my heart? Tian Ruojing frowned. "You are like the devil in my heart, and I am also like the barrier in your heart." At the thought of what Qing Feng said, Tian Ruojing couldn't help but have a killing intent in her heart. Yes, Qing Feng was the barrier in her heart. The reason was very simple. Qing Feng once saved her life, which also touched her. She even made a vow to stay with Qing Feng for the rest of her life. But later, she regretted it. She didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. At that time, it was not her who asked Qing Feng to save her. What's more, people would grow. What she longed for was a Taoist companion who was strong enough for her to look up to, not a waste with a problem in the foundation of Tao. In these years, Tian Ruojing had never taken this matter to heart. But as she cultivated to the level of Zhu Xian great ancestor, she began to seek the immortal way. However, she suddenly realized that the life-saving grace from back then had actually become a negative karma in her heart. Therefore, she would take the initiative to see Qing Feng and try to completely cut off this barrier. But now Tian Ruojing suddenly found that after meeting with Qing Feng, not only did she not solve this problem, but her state of mind was sinking deeper and deeper into this barrier. Qing Feng, you really do harm to people. Tian Ruojing's heart surged with unspeakable anger. P.S. Looking down, there is still the 4th chapter, to make up for the explosive chapter that Awadara Alliance Master last month. Chapter 3287. Tian Ruojing didn't expect that a good-for-nothing at the reincarnation developing realm would aggravate her negative karma. After a long moment of silence, her beautiful eyes were suffused with a wisp of resolution. She would be harmed if she didn't make a decision. Sect Master, I have something I need you to do. One day later, Tian Ruojing found the leader of the Celestial Spirit sect, Wen Tuyang. Please give me your orders, Uncle Master. Wen Tuyang quickly agreed. 10 years later, Tian Ruojing would become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion, which made Wen Tuyang even more respectful. Bring people to the Celestial sect, and bring that good-for-nothing Qing Feng here. Tian Ruojing looked indifferent. If they don't agree, just do it. Wen Tuyang was shocked. Even though he had many doubts and puzzles, he still accepted the order and left in a hurry. I'll keep you by my side. I don't believe I can't cut you off. Tian Ruojing's eyes were full of ruthlessness. Leader, bad news. The leader of the Celestial Spirits sect has brought people here and threatened to hand over Uncle Qing Feng. Otherwise, we'll bear the consequences. A panicked voice sounded in the Celestial Spirits sect. Leader Fu Yunzi was alarmed, followed by Supreme Elder Qing Heng, Qing Gung, and a group of big shots of the Celestial Spirits sect. They were all very surprised. Tian Ruojing came to see Qing Feng alone yesterday. Why did the Celestial Spirits sect come to ask for him after only one day? In the past, Uncle Qing Feng would be stopped every time he went to the Celestial Spirits sect. This time, they took the initiative to take him away. It's really strange. Someone murmured. Could it be that Uncle Qing Feng offended Tian Ruojing yesterday? Someone frowned. Those with good intentions don't come. Wen Tuyang has made such a big show. I'm afraid today's matter won't be easy. Someone looked gloomy. Send someone to find your Uncle Qing Feng and ask him to come quickly. Let's go to the mountain gate first. Qing Heng ordered. In front of the Celestial Spirit sect. The leader of the Celestial Spirit sect, Wen Tuyang, and a group of big shots gathered together to form a powerful camp. There were 2 ancestral elders in this camp, and a group of great emperors who were Zhu Shui's elders. It could be said that apart from Tian Ruojing, the Celestial Spirit sect had almost sent out their most powerful force. When Qing Heng, Qing Gung, Fu Yunzi, and the others saw this scene, their expressions became slightly solemn. Wen Tuyang, what is the meaning of this? Patriarch Fu Yunzi said in a deep voice. Wen Tuyang said indifferently, under the order of Grand Elder Tian Ruojing, I'd like to invite your sect's Grand Elder Qing Feng to come with us. He was dressed in an official robe, and he was a rank 8 martial emperor. Is there a reason? Fu Yunzi asked again. Why is there a need for a reason? Wen Tuyang laughed. Fu Yunzi, is my sect's Grand Elder Tian Ruojing's order not effective? His voice was filled with arrogance. Which sect in the Eastern Territory didn't know that Tian Ruojing was about to soar into the sky and become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion? Those who knew what was good for them should know what to do. Fu Yunzi and the others all had gloomy expressions on their faces. When Tuyang said leisurely, "Everyone, for you, Qing Feng is a disgrace. In my opinion, you won't become enemies with the Celestial Spirit sect because of this, right? Ridiculous, if we hand him over like this, it will show that the Celestial Spirit sect is incompetent." Qing Heng couldn't help but say coldly. When Tuyang snorted coldly, "Qing Heng, you have hurt the foundation of the great Tao, and the injuries on your body have not healed yet. If you don't care about the life and death of the Celestial Spirit sect, you can choose to go to war with the Celestial Spirit sect." His words made the faces of Fu Yunzi and the others change, uncertainly. Just because of Qing Feng, was it worth fighting with the Celestial Spirit sect? What's more, this was equivalent to completely offending Tian Ruojing. "Martial uncle, this matter," a Celestial Spirit sect elder said hesitantly. After saying that, Qing Heng said angrily, "You want me to abandon Qing Feng?" That awe-inspiring gaze made the Celestial Spirit sect elder tremble. He quickly shook his head and said, I don't dare. Seeing this, Wen Tuyang couldn't help but say coldly, "Qing Heng, you are determined to protect Qing Feng, but the Celestial Spirit sect doesn't think so. Are you sure you want to let the whole Celestial Spirit sect suffer because of a trash like Qing Feng?" The atmosphere was oppressive. The expressions of the big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect were uncertain. Handing over Qing Feng in exchange for the whole sect to avoid a disaster, to most of them, this was something acceptable. The reason was very simple: all these years, Qing Feng was the shame of the sect, and had humiliated the Celestial Spirit sect countless times. If it wasn't for Qing Heng's protection, who knows how many people would have already expelled him from the sect? "Sect leader, what do you think?" Qing Heng looked at Fu Yunzi. His heart was already somewhat desolate. How could he not know how the people of the sect looked at Qing Feng? At this moment of life and death for the sect, of course they would rather sacrifice Qing Feng in exchange for a moment of peace. The others also looked at Fu Yunzi. Fu Yunzi was silent for a moment and said, "Martial uncle, in my opinion, we can't hand him over. Doing this is like holding firewood to put out a fire. As long as the firewood is not extinguished, the fire will not be extinguished. If we give in today, in the future, if the Celestial Spirit sect takes an inch and wants a foot, won't we have to hand over more people? This opening must not be opened." As he finished speaking, his expression became extremely resolute. Many people's hearts sank. Qing Heng revealed a touch of relief. Fu Yunzi still had the strength of character. But at this time, Qing Geng was angry and said sternly, "Nonsense. As a sect leader, you want to sacrifice the rest of the sect for a trash like Qing Feng? Do you know how heavy the price we will pay for doing this?" Qing Heng frowned. Fu Yunzi's expression also changed. Looking at the others, they seemed to have found their backbone, and began to follow Qing Geng's lead. Qing Geng looked at Qing Heng. "Senior brother, you can protect that trash Qing Feng, but don't think of dragging the whole Celestial Spirit sect down. For this matter, I agree to hand over Qing Feng." I also agree with Senior Uncle Qing Geng's decision. Some of the elders hesitated for a moment, but also gritted their teeth and expressed their support for Qing Geng. And some of the other elders were silent. The situation suddenly became complicated. This scene was seen by Wen Tuyang and the others in the distance, and they all secretly sneered. Who could not see that the Celestial Spirit sect was in chaos? "You all think that I am protecting Qing Feng, but how do you know that once we do this today, the Celestial Spirit sect will be nibbled away step by step, and it will decline?" Qing Heng let out a long sigh. "Fine, I will leave with Qing Feng, so that you can avoid the disaster in front of you." "Senior uncle, I will go with you," Fu Yunzi said angrily. Everything that happened in front of him was difficult for him to accept. In the past, he never thought that such a big Celestial Spirit sect would actually expose so many problems when they encountered a crisis, and it seemed so unbearable. especially the choice of Qing Geng and the other elders. It made his heart even more cold. As long as they didn't encounter danger, everyone could coexist peacefully for a while. Once they encountered danger, many of their true faces were exposed. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Fu Yunzi was very clear that after this incident, the Celestial Spirit sect was destined to decline, and he would rather die in battle today than live in this world. Good. Such a big Celestial Spirit sect, you, Fu Yunzi, did not let me down. Qing Heng laughed happily. Then, he looked not far away. Junior brother Qing Feng, come here. Lin Sun had already arrived in front of the mountain gate and saw all of this, but his heart was not affected. He had seen too many similar things in the past. In the face of a disaster, a person's character could often be seen, and the atmosphere of a sect could also be seen. And these big figures of the Celestial Spirit sect indeed lacked some foundation. They only cared about the gains and losses in front of them, and did not know that after this incident, they were destined to become food on the plate of the Celestial Spirit sect. Senior brother, we don't have to leave today. Lin Sun said softly. Celestial sect being able to achieve its current status is all thanks to you, senior brother. Fu Yunzi has also put in a lot of effort for the sect. This is your place, how can you let others ruin it? As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. It seemed that they did not expect that such a shame of the sect would dare to boast shamelessly at this time. Qing Feng, if it weren't for you, how could the sect encounter today's crisis? Qing Geng's face darkened and he shouted sternly. The other elders also glared at Lin Sun. Junior brother, don't argue with them. Qing Heng let out a long sigh. I really don't want to waste my breath on them. Lin Sun said and looked at Wen Tuyang and the others in the distance. Today's matter, indeed, started because of me, then let me solve it. His eyes were calm, and he had made a decision in his heart. He had been low-key and enduring for more than a year. Now that he encountered such a crisis, if he continued to endure, he would feel ashamed of Qing Heng's protection. You! In the distance Wen Tuyang could not help but be stunned and then laughed. You, the shame of the Celestial Spirit sect, dare to say such big words, you are simply insane. Beside him, the big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect also laughed and were amused. For 900 years, in their cognition, Qing Feng was a joke, a good-for-nothing who had shamed the Celestial Spirit sect countless times. It was too funny that such a guy should boast shamelessly at this moment. Qing Geng and the other elders only felt that they had lost face, and an indescribable sense of shame surged in their hearts. This Qing Feng simply lost their face. At this time, in the camp of the Celestial Spirit sect, a young man with white hair and beard laughed and said, Qing Feng, don't you want to solve today's matter alone? Come on, obediently surrender, so that we don't have to do it again. Okay. Lin Sun also laughed, and there was a cold luster flashing in the depths of his eyes. He walked towards the distance. Qing Heng stretched out his hand to stop him, but was stopped by an invisible force. At the same time, a voice sounded in his ear, Senior brother, there is one thing I haven't told you, but later you may understand. The voice was still drifting, and Lin Sun's figure had disappeared. Chapter 3288. Seeing Lin Sun leave the mountain gate alone, Qing Geng and the others were stunned. This guy's so-called solution was to walk into a trap? Their expressions became strange. Uncle, why didn't you stop, Uncle? Fu Yunzi was a little anxious. He didn't expect that Qing Heng, who had always protected Qing Feng, would let Qing Feng die at this moment. Let's wait and see. Qing Heng's expression was complicated as he vaguely understood. In the distance, Wen Tuyang and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter when they saw Lin Sun walking over alone. Qing Heng, I didn't expect you to give up the shame of your junior brother, Wen Tuyang sneered. The white-haired man beside him flashed and rushed towards Lin Sun. I'll capture this guy first in case of undue trouble. Before he finished his words, Lin soon grabbed his neck and lifted him up like a chicken. It's a good thing that undo trouble, at least you don't have to die. What do you think? Lin soon smiled slightly, his eyes deep and indifferent. The white-haired man's pupils dilated and his face turned purple. He kept struggling, but to no avail. He couldn't even exert a trace of strength. The whole place was silent. The big shots of Celestial Spirit sect who were laughing all froze and widened their eyes. They almost thought they were seeing things. A trash of the reincarnation development realm had captured a powerful existence at the 7th level of the Emperor realm with just a wave of his hand. In the distance, Qing Gung's face stiffened and he cried out involuntarily. Looking at the others, they were also dumbfounded. Uncle, Fu Yunzi couldn't help but be stunned. Bang! The white-haired man's body turned into ashes and scattered, as easily as crushing an ant. Then, Lin Sun looked at Wen Tuyang and the others and said, "Why don't you laugh? Keep laughing." Wen Tuyang and the others' expressions changed. "Who the hell are you?" A man in a black robe stood out, his voice gloomy. Shi Yunling, the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect, a Ju-Ing emperor at the Perfection realm. As he walked out, a terrifying aura swept out, causing the heavens and earth to shake. In the Tao development world, Ju-Ing emperor was the strongest existence under the immortal realm, strong enough to look down on most cultivators in the world. But how could Lin Sun put such a small character in his eyes? As he strode forward, he suddenly appeared in front of Shi Yunling in the next moment and casually stretched out his hand to grab. That speed was too fast. Startled, Shi Yunling subconsciously waved his arms to block in front of him. Crack! Crack! Both of his arms were fractured and shattered, blood splattering everywhere. And his neck was grabbed by Lin Sun and lifted up at will. A great ancestor of the Ju-Ing great ancestor was so weak. This scene caused everyone's scalps to go numb. They were all dumbfounded. Even if they racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to imagine how the Green Peak, which was seen as a joke by many sects and the shame of the Celestial sect, could become so terrifying in such a short amount of time. Stop! The eyes of Wen Tuyang and the others nearby almost popped out of their sockets. Shi Yunling being held hostage made them not dare to act blindly without thinking. But they were wrong. Lin Sun didn't intend to take Shi Yunling hostage at all. Bang! As his fingers exerted force, Shi Yunling's body turned into ashes. A supreme elder of the Celestial Spirit sect was killed just like that. That scene frightened Qing Heng and Fu Yunzi and made them tremble in their hearts. Looking at Wen Tuyang and the others, they were all scared out of their wits and were at a loss. They chose to escape at the first time. Even Shi Yunling was no match for Lin Sun, let alone them. Unfortunately, they didn't know how terrible their opponents were this time. Then, Lin Sun flicked his fingers in the void as casually and naturally as playing chess. But in the void there were streams of sword chi whistling out. The sharpness was so strong that it illuminated the mountains and rivers in an instant. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Puff, puff. With a muffled sound, strings of blood splashed out in different places. 19 people, including Wen Tuyang, the headmaster of the Celestial Spirit sect, were all pierced through by the sword chi and died between heaven and earth. When the sword chi disappeared, the scene was filled with blood. The figures of those opponents seemed to be erased from the world and disappeared completely. In the distance, everyone in the mountain gate was dumbfounded. This time, when Tuyang and the others came under the order of Tian Ruojing, which made these big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect regard it as a great crisis. Who would have thought that Qing Feng would slaughter all of his opponents in an instant? Martial uncle, Fu Yunzi was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Looking at the others, they were also the same. No one could calm down. Qing Heng's expression became more and more complicated, and his voice was like a whisper. Don't you understand? He is a favored. It was like a bolt from the blue hit their minds, making Qing Gong and the others suddenly understand, and their hearts sank to the bottom. Before, they all expressed that they were determined to hand over Qingfeng. If Qingfeng retaliated now, who among them could be his opponent? In the distance, Lin Sun came and cupped his hands to Qingheng. I'm sorry to let you know this news now. Although I'm not your junior brother Qingfeng, I borrowed Qingfeng's body and memories after all. Before I leave this world, I will naturally repay you. Qingheng took a deep breath and cupped his hands. Thank you. His heart was in a mess of complicated feelings. Could it be that you are the favored Lin Sun who is wanted by the four orthodoxies? Qinggang suddenly realized something and cried out involuntarily. That's right. Lin Sun nodded. Lin Sun. The hearts of the others were also shocked. In the past year, the four orthodoxies had sent out countless forces to search for Lin Sun. Who would have thought that he had been hiding in their celestial spirit sect? Do you have anything else to say? Lin Sun looked at Qinggang. Qinggang's body stiffened, and he said with a trembling voice, What do you want to do? In the face of a crisis, you can even abandon your own sect brothers. What's the use of keeping you? As Lin Sun said, he raised his hand and slashed down with sword qi. Qinggang was instantly killed on the spot. That bloody scene caused the others' bodies to tremble, their faces turning pale from shock. Especially those elders who were on the same side as Qinggang, they were all scared out of their wits, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. At this time, Lin Sun looked at them. Seeing this, Qingheng couldn't help but say, Friend, please don't kill them anymore. They are people of my celestial sect after all. Why don't you let me handle them? He was also shocked by Lin Sun's bloody and decisive means. Okay, Lin Sun agreed. Qingheng heaved a sigh of relief and said, Thank you, fellow Taoist. No need to thank me. Lin Sun replied casually, Everyone, you don't have to worry that because of me, the celestial sect will become the target of the four great orthodoxies. It won't be long before I personally make a trip to the four great orthodoxies to put an end to my relationship with them. The enmity between the heavenly mandate envoys. Qingheng couldn't help but be stunned. He'd actually planned on going to the four great orthodoxies to take revenge? The others also felt as if they were in a dream. To them, the four great sects were the most supreme and overlord powers in the Tao evolution world. Not to mention those envoys of heavenly mandate that had already stepped foot onto the eternal path towards the Tao. They were absolutely existences that they could only look up to in their entire lifetimes. But now, Lin Sun said that he wanted to go there. How could they not be shocked? Lin Sun didn't explain further. He changed the topic and said, There's no time to lose. I have to make a trip to the Celestial Spirit sect to see Tian Ruojing. Everyone can return to the sect first and wait. After saying that, he turned around and left. Qingheng, Fu Yunzi, and the others only gradually calmed down after watching his figure disappear. Fu Yunzi said worriedly, Martial uncle, once today's matter is spread, our celestial sect will definitely be at the heart of the struggle. What should we do? Qingheng suddenly said, Do you know how the four great orthodoxies stand at the peak of the Tao evolution world? Fu Yunzi was stunned and shook his head to indicate that he didn't know. It's because every orthodoxy has the existence of a favored. Qingheng took a deep breath and said, Favored possess remarkable abilities, and they possess supreme techniques that we are unable to imagine. Since ancient times until now, every time a favored leaves, they will leave behind a heavenly path in the Tao development world. And the four great orthodoxies have these complete great Tao. That's why the four great orthodoxies are able to stand at the peak of the world. Fu Yunzi said, Martial uncle, what do you mean by saying this? Qingheng said in a deep voice, At present, if our celestial sect wants to survive, there is only one way to choose. That is to completely believe in Lin Sun. Believe in him? Fu Yunzi couldn't help but think of Lin Sun's words just now. His heart trembled. Martial uncle, Do you think that Lin Sun really has a chance to wipe out the enemies of the four great orthodoxies? Qing Hing said, It's not that I think so, but they will fight sooner or later, and I'd rather believe that Lin Sun will win. What if he loses? Someone couldn't help but ask. Then our celestial sect will be destroyed without a doubt. Qing Hing said expressionlessly. Everyone was silent for a while, and their hearts were in turmoil. Why are you so nervous? If Lin Sun wins, our celestial sect may usher in an unprecedented change. Qing Heng's eyes were shining, and he said, In the world, fortune and misfortune always go hand in hand. At present, it seems that Lin Sun still cares about the kindness of my junior brother Qing Feng. This is enough. As he said this, his heart was faintly excited. According to what he knew, when the favored left one day, the cultivator he borrowed would retain the immortal realm and great Tao attainments. This also meant that when Lin Sun left, his junior brother Qing Feng would realize an unimaginable change. In the void, Lin Sun walked slowly. It's only been half a year, and the 5 great Tao bodies deduced a supreme great Tao that is suitable for Qing Feng's cultivation. This is not bad. Lin Sun felt the surging cultivation of Zhu Xie Emperor in his body, and he couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. Compared to his cultivation that was close to the boundless realm, the power he possessed now was still very weak, but at least he had a certain amount of power to protect himself. And this was also the reason why he dared to reveal his identity today. After dealing with Tianruojing, I'll leave this area and find a secluded place to cultivate. Only by stepping on the immortal path can I compete with those mandate envoys. Lin Sun made a decision. Chapter 3289. Moon Cage Mountain. The place where Celestial Spirit Sect was located. Lin Sun's figure floated over in just a quarter of an hour. Lin Sun didn't embarrass those small fries guarding the mountain gate. He quietly passed through layers of restriction formations and entered Celestial Spirit Sect. Before long, he came to a cave residence located in the depths of Moon Cage Mountain. This is a good place for cultivation. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and looked at the cave residence. Then he stretched out his hand and gently knocked in the air. Buzz. The restrictive power that enveloped the cave abode immediately fluctuated violently. But there was no response for a long time. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and stepped forward. The restriction power around the cave house suddenly exploded like fragile glass, and his figure had already entered the cave house. This woman is really alert. She escaped in advance. Lin Sun glanced around the cave residence and took a cup of tea in his hand. The tea was warm, and the person drinking tea had obviously left for nearly a quarter of an hour. Half an hour ago, I killed Wen Tuyang and others in front of the gate of Celestial Spirit Sect. This woman must have noticed the death of Wen Tuyang and others at that time, so she escaped as soon as possible. Realizing this, Lin Sun frowned slightly. He didn't expect that Tianruojing would be so vigilant. It doesn't matter if she escaped. I'd like to see how big a storm you can set off. Lin Sun turned around and left. However, when his figure was about to leave Celestial Spirit Sect, his spiritual awareness suddenly captured a familiar figure, Wei Xian. He was the future leader of Celestial Spirit Sect who had beaten Qin Feng and made him fall into a coma. At this time, Wei Xian, who was dressed in snow-white clothes and had a handsome face, was talking and laughing with a pretty woman. Suddenly, Wei Xian was stunned. He opened his eyes wide and looked into the distance. Qin Feng? Why are you in my Celestial Spirit Sect? Lin Sun smiled and looked at the pretty woman beside Wei Xian. If Wei Xian's cultivation was abolished, would you still agree to stay with him? The pretty woman was stunned and obviously didn't respond. You're courting death. Wei Xian's face darkened. He jumped forward and slapped at Lin Sun. However, his figure was still halfway when he suddenly trembled. Then, the aura on his body flowed out like a punctured ball. In the blink of an eye, Wei Xian's cultivation had completely disappeared, and his entire person seemed to have aged many years, showing an indescribable state of fatigue. Seeing this scene, the pretty woman screamed in shock, "Ah!" Looking at the field again, Lin Sun had already disappeared. No. What about my cultivation? Where's my cultivation? Wei Xian collapsed to the ground, his body trembling. His face was filled with terror and confusion, as if he had gone mad. How could Wei Xian accept that he had suddenly fallen from a lofty and aloof cultivator back to the state of a commoner? "Senior brother, I'll go look for master," the delicate girl said in a trembling voice. She was just about to turn around and leave when Wei Xian shouted, "Junior sister, you must not leave me! Please. Senior brother, I won't. Wait here, I'll go find master." The charming woman squeezed out a smile, turned around, and left. In next to no time, a group of people flashed over hastily. It was Wei Xian's master and some great figures. Wei Xian looked around, but he did not see the figure of the delicate girl. The last trace of hope in his heart was shattered. He thought of Qing Feng, and the humiliation and mockery that Qing Feng had suffered all these years. Qing Feng still has the protection of his senior brother Qing Heng, and he has the cultivation of the reincarnation developing realm. As for me, I have no cultivation. I have nothing. At this moment, Wei Xian completely broke down and went crazy. Celestial sect. In the main hall of the sect, when Lin Sun arrived, Qing Heng, Fu Yunzi, and the others were already waiting there. "Taoist friend, did your trip go smoothly?" Qing Heng stood up and asked. Tian Ruojing escaped in advance. "If I'm not mistaken, she must have gone to the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect or the Celestial Pavilion," Lin Sun said casually. He glanced at everyone and found that whether it was Qing Heng, Fu Yunzi, or the others, they were all very calm when facing him. Obviously, they had accepted the fact that Qing Feng was a favored. This is not good. Qing Heng frowned. With Tian Ruojing's intelligence, she must have some clues. And with her identity, whether it is the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect or the Celestial Pavilion, I'm afraid that they will send forces to investigate this matter. Once they find out that there is something wrong with your identity. He didn't finish his words, but his meaning was clear. Fu Yunzi and the others' expressions changed. No matter how the situation developed, their celestial sect was destined to be unable to stay out of it. But Lin Sun said, "If you trust me, then bring everyone in the celestial sect and leave this place with me." Fu Yunzi and the others looked at each other. Qing Heng said directly, "Okay." He had already thought about it before. Following Lin Sun was the only way to survive. Otherwise, their celestial sect would no longer have any possibility of survival. Seeing that Qing Heng had agreed, Fu Yunzi and the others also agreed. Seeing this, Lin Sun didn't hesitate anymore and immediately took action. After a while, boom! The Fengxia Spirit Mountain where the celestial sect was entrenched produced a violent roar, and then suddenly rose from the ground. Not far away, as Lin Sun made a gesture with both hands, the huge Fengxia Spirit Mountain continued to shrink until it became the size of a fist. Lin Sun grabbed it from the air and handed it to Qing Heng beside him. Qing Heng carefully put the Fengxia Spirit Mountain into his sleeve and said, "Taoism Pier, where are we going next? Even if the enemy wants to come here, it will take some time. Let's take this opportunity to leave this territory first. When I set foot on the path of immortality, I will find them one by one to settle accounts," Lin Sun said without hesitation. In the past, his cultivation was weak, and he could only keep a low profile in the celestial sect. But now it was different. His cultivation had reached the level of Juzi Emperor Ancestor, and he had the power to protect himself. If he wanted to find a place to hide, it was extremely difficult for immortals to find him. "Okay." Qing Heng nodded. "Don't worry, Taoism Pier. I have experienced many dangerous things in my life. The current situation is nothing at all," Lin Sun said with a smile. He could see that Qing Heng seemed calm, but in fact, he was extremely nervous and perturbed. After a pause, Lin Sun continued, "Also, you don't have to worry about the injury to your Tao foundation. I will help you deal with it." Qing Heng's body trembled, and he forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Taoism Peer." Lin Sun smiled and did not say anything else. He floated away with Qing Heng. 2 days later, under the sky, a group of figures with terrifying auras teleported across the sky, and finally stopped at the place where the innate martial ancestor originally resided. The person in the lead was the Celestial Pavilion's Supreme Elder, Yuan Zhong. He was an immortal and transcendent realm great perfection. He was also one of the 7 Gen Heaven's mandate envoys distributed in the Tao development world. Beside him were the Immortal Pavilion's immortals, as well as several old antiques from the Crimson Cut immortal sect. All of them had immortal cultivation. Tian Ruojing was also among them. However, her cultivation of Zhu Emperor ancestor was very inconspicuous in front of the group of immortals. The Fengxia Spirit Mountain has disappeared. Tian Ruojing's eyes narrowed. So, they have already sensed that something is wrong and fled in advance? Yuan Zhong, who was in the lead, frowned. He wore a long robe with wide sleeves, and his long hair was coiled into a bun. His figure was tall, and his figure was surrounded by a round and translucent immortal divine halo. It should be so. Tian Ruojing took a deep breath and said, "However, in my opinion, the more it is like this, the more it is enough to prove that there is something wrong with Qing Feng's identity. It is very likely that he is favored Lin Sun, whom all the seniors have been searching for this year. This is merely your guess. Do you have any evidence to prove it?" Someone looked at Tian Ruojing coldly. Tian Ruojing's heart trembled. After a moment of silence, she suddenly took a deep breath and said, "Although I have no evidence, I dare to guarantee with my head that Qing Feng is definitely a favored." A few days ago, she had personally gone to the Celestial sect to meet Qing Feng. At that time, she had sensed that there was something wrong with his actions and word. When she returned to her cave residence, the more she thought about it, the more she felt uneasy. How could a trash at the reincarnation development stage determine that she had karma in her heart with just a few words? And when she ordered Wen Tuyang of the Celestial Spirit sect to lead a group of experts to the Celestial sect, the series of events that happened allowed Tian Ruojing to conclude that there was something strange about Qing Feng. Otherwise, how could Wen Tuyang and the others be annihilated in an instant? The Celestial sect was merely a second-rate force, and even their strongest, Qing Heng, had Tao injuries. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for them to have the ability to annihilate Wen Tuyang and the others. Then there was only one possibility. There was something wrong with Qing Feng. This was Tian Ruojing's deduction. You are right. If there is no problem with Qing Feng's identity, the entire Celestial sect would not have to flee this place in advance. Yuan Zhong's eyes flickered. And if the favored who borrowed Qing Feng's body and identity is really Lin Sun, then we can deduce that they must have chosen to flee as soon as they sensed that the news might have been leaked. Someone frowned and said, "This isn't good. The Tao evolution world is so huge. Where should we go to search?" Yuan Zhong couldn't help but sigh, and a wisp of gloominess appeared between his brows. "It really isn't easy to find," Tian Ruojing suddenly said. "Seniors, as far as I'm concerned, since Lin Sun chose to flee, then it undoubtedly proves that he doesn't possess the strength to go against all of you, and it's even to the extent that it's impossible for him to step foot on the eternal path." Yuan Zhong couldn't help but glance at Tian Ruojing and said, "Your analysis isn't bad. But how did you determine that he hasn't stepped foot on the eternal path?" Tian Ruojing was excited in her heart. She knew she'd drawn the attention of Yuan Zhong, so she forcefully restrained the joy in her heart and said calmly, "It's very simple. It's very simple. Only a little over a year has passed since Lin Sun entered the Tao evolution world, and according to my knowledge, practically none of the favored that entered the Tao evolution world since the ancient times were able to step foot onto the eternal Tao path in such a short period of time. Tian Ruojing paused for a moment, and when she saw everyone's gazes descend onto her, a wisp of a confident smile appeared on her peerlessly beautiful face. She said, "Earlier, I've already said that Lin Sun chose to flee and not resist. All of this is sufficient to prove that his strength is far from being able to go against an immortal,